I'm Sean Fennessey.
I'm Amanda Dobbins.
And this is The Big Picture, a conversation show about the electric state and 10 movies that we missed. Later in this episode, I'll be joined by Mark Anthony Green, the writer-director of the new film Opus, and one of my oldest friends. We talked about his long road to making his directorial debut and the inspirations for his I.O. Edeberi, John Malkovich horror film. MAG, a real smart, charismatic guy. I hope you will stick around for our conversation. Joining us now, Chris Ryan. Chris, I have something to share with you.
Hit me.
Programming reminder for you, a listener of The Big Picture.
Yeah.
This week, we begin 25 for 25.
Do you think I already have it marked down?
You do?
Yeah, I'm already ready. Yeah.
You're holding space to listen to the first episode.
I've told my wife not to speak to me for at least 24 hours after the release of this podcast.
How many times will you listen to that episode?
4 or 5?
Thank you very much.
Different speeds to hear different textures in your voices.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
We've already recorded the episode.
I've bought an Audi already. You know, like you're fucking influencing me.
This is a roughly bi-monthly series we're doing on the show through the end of the year.
Bi-monthly every 2 weeks or every other month?
Well, it has two definitions.
Yeah,
I'm glad you
thank
asked. It is going to be every 2 weeks.
Yeah, it makes sense.
More or less,
Okay.
with 9 months to go in the year.
You have to kind of let the movie world tell you what you are and are not allowed to do.
Yeah,
right?
I'm ready to spoil for you right now what number 25 is. It's The Electric State, the new film from the Russo brothers. Are you excited about that?
Yeah, I am, honestly.
Just kidding. It's not. We'll get to the Russos and The Electric
Out
State
of curiosity,
momentarily.
are you guys opening 25 for 25 to more people than the two of you? Like, it'll just be the two of you. It'll be...
In fact, so we
Frost
recently
Nixon.
recorded like a selection committee episode.
You're Nixon, by the way.
Accurate.
We all know that. We recorded a selection committee episode that it's going to come out in December after the list has been revealed. But it was us like working through the list in real time.
Okay.
Like with the dock open. I believe Bobby was like recording. Is that an earthquake?
I think it's construction
okay.
outside.
All right. Okay. Well, it's a construction and not an earthquake. Okay. I just didn't know whether I needed to. Like, what would we do in this room?
Die?
Go over that way.
The lights would fall on our
This
head.
would suck to die in
This
here.
would, like-
oh my
Yeah,
God.
Not ideal.
You know?
Really not ideal.
Okay. Not an earthquake. So we made the list live. And at some point I suggested that maybe like you could come in and give your commentary. And Sean was like, no, absolutely not.
Okay.
Nothing offensive. Nothing
I have
against
lots of
you.
outlets for my opinions.
Are you guys not doing a 25 thing for the watch?
I don't know if Andy's seen 25 television shows. No, I'm just kidding. I think TV is harder. I've thought about this a lot when it comes to doing historical retrospectives because you just have to put so many hours up.
Mm-hmm.
So like an individual rewatch would be really fun, but acting as if like we have all of Lost at our fingertips at all times is very difficult for
I see.
Greenwald and I.
So Lioness number 1.
Look, I mean, that's what's freshest in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's probably the most relevant show in the world right now.
Because it's how you feel about our foreign policy.
Oh boy.
Okay.
Do you want me to talk to you about the Odyssey?
Yes.
Or are we on a clock? Like, when should we do the Odyssey talk?
Yeah.
Honestly, whenever you want. I'm waiting for you to schedule it's the Odyssey our time.
Well, the
not
problem,
like in the middle
here's
of
my
another
problem,
episode.
is that I wanted this to be a thing. You know, I wanted Odyssey updates.
Yeah.
And now I'm being served Odyssey updates all the time.
Uh-huh.
And
Where? On Reddit?
on Reddit, on Instagram, on Twitter, there's several Christopher Nolan like updates Twitter accounts that are just like, here's a picture of like the weather.
So,
today.
like, are you
They're having
following them?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're not like really being served it. It's
But
like
I
you
got
sought it
served
out.
them in the first place.
Okay.
You know, and then I was a weak man and I clicked follow. And so
What
You need
is
to
the
be-
weather in Greece?
You need to reset your mentality on this.
So the problem is
you
I
need
don't
to be David Muir. You need to be Nicholas Kristoff. Like you need to get on the ground. You need to get your gear and you need to record after you witness the moment. You can't be like, oh, I got served on social media. No,
Yeah.
This is the Odyssey.
So you want me to go to Greece?
I'm not saying that
I will come with
explicitly.
you.
I will happily stay here.
Here we go.
I think if you want to do the work,
Okay.
you come in whenever the news breaks.
All right. You know, I missed the opportunity to talk about Matt Damon and John Bernthal arriving at the airport, which was like my favorite moment of the year so far. Bernthal's hair, incredible.
Did
or
he
lack
shave
of
his
it.
head?
He shaved his head, but
head.
kept the beard.
Okay.
Mhm.
But yeah,
And we learned who he's playing. Who is he playing?
he's playing Telemachus, right?
I don't think that's right.
No.
Agamemnon's Safdie, right?
Agamemnon is Benny Safdie.
Okay, I'm just Googling
Clytemnestra
Odyssey
is-
cast
we
updates.
learned
Maybe we should have
Clytemnestra
locked
is
this down
Lupita
before we started
Nyong'o.
rolling. Okay. Oh, okay. Exciting. Let's see. No, this is.
I really
not
was
what
hoping
want.
for more from the
I
Odyssey.
know, I was
I
too.
feel like we got to get some more prep for you. We got to figure out what the layout is on this. On
Well, I
these
kind
episodes.
of anticipated you being like, no, we have a very busy show today.
Well, we
and
do
then
have
I
a very
wasn't
busy
gonna have
show,
to
but then
do
you
it.
launched into it. I don't know. We've got a lot going on.
Hold on.
I have what seems like an unreliable report from comicbookmovie.com. Are you guys
Okay.
with me?
Yeah.
Okay with me spreading that info?
Yeah, please.
Sorry, I
Okay.
just clicked on the
Tom
IMDb.
Holland.
Hold on. I just clicked on the IMDb page and the writers are Homer and Christopher Nolan. So that's pretty good.
It's accurate, I
That's
think.
good shit right there. Thanks for Christopher Nolan's great work. Tom Holland will reportedly play Odysseus' son Telemachus.
That's right.
Yeah.
Zendaya will be Athena. Charlize Theron as Cersei.
Yeah. See?
Anne
Told you.
Hathaway as Penelope. Benny Safdie
Oh.
as Agamemnon. Lupita will be Clytemnestra?
Clytemnestra.
Clytemnestra, yeah.
Clytemnestra.
Oh, that's exciting.
Never said that out loud, but that's all we got so far. I
Okay.
believe.
I will do more research.
And
What
again,
I-
this is not reliable.
the
This
reason
is
why
just
I
me
brought this
saying
up
stuff.
was this movie is still 15 months away from being in our theaters.
Mhm.
Is it possible to overexpose a film before that? You know what I mean? Like, should I stay away from the updates because I'm so excited about the movie?
Well, that's something you've talked about in the past with not wanting to watch trailers
Yeah.
and things like that. So this is going against, I think, some of your philosophy. I mean, for me, I love to hear an update about what's going on with the production.
Yeah, but you don't, because I don't think you've really enjoyed this one battle after another process. I don't think you've enjoyed the budget speculation. I don't think you want to see Vegas reactions. Do you? Don't you want that fresh PTA trailer?
That's not the life I chose for myself, and I have to be okay with that. You know?
I'm just trying to figure out who Bernthal could be so I'm just, reading things.
Did you start reading the Odyssey from page 1?
No, but I am on the Wikipedia page. I'm also kind of stuck on, I'm just hearing Anne Hathaway as Penelope right now.
It's an inspired choice.
You think it's good?
I don't know
That's
whether
exactly.
that's
I could imagine a long journey returning home to her.
okay. Okay, that's yeah.
Right?
Um,
That's excellent casting, in my opinion.
Okay, I'm gonna sit on that for a bit, and
Here's what you need to do.
Yeah.
You got to bring more to the table than Christopher Nolan Arts and Updates X.com.
You need me to do
Account can
firsthand
do.
reporting.
You need to do something. Well, not necessarily interpretive work,
Okay.
analysis of what we're learning.
Okay. I'll do so.
That is
Next
what-
time I'll be better prepared.
The Odyssey R is an important product on this show for the next 18 months. Okay.
you don't have to wait for studio time. You can just like FaceTime right in.
Yeah, voice notes. Voice notes in the middle of the night. You've awoken to learn that some news has broken.
Will there still be movie theaters when this movie comes out?
I'm glad you brought that up.
Oh,
Not the best weekend at the box office.
no.
I'm not going to do what you all think I'm going to do,
I don't think you will.
which is just freak out.
Yeah, it's
I'm
early
not
March.
gonna do that.
It's fine.
It's early March.
St.
But
John's was playing.
St. John's is a 2 seed in March Madness. I'm not going to pretend like I've been closely watching St. John's for the last 20 years, let alone for the last 3 months. But as a kid who went to several games at Alumni Hall as a teenager, this is a great time for St. John's
Okay.
fans, and I acknowledge that. Rick Pitino, complicated figure, great coach. Does that mean anything to you?
Yes. But it's like one of the guys in suits, with the hairstyle. Who's the other guy? Bang.
Oh, Mike Breen? Or
no,
Jay Wright.
what-
Jay
yeah,
Wright.
Jay Wright.
He
But also,
retired,
I know
yeah.
that Mike Breen is the other
Yeah.
Bang guy.
Yeah,
and
Jay-
then if you are really good, you get a double Bang.
Jay
But,
Wright
like,
retired. His replacement was just let go from Villanova.
But all of
Okay.
his children play for my New York Knicks, which is wonderful.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great.
The box office, not good. $52 million across all releases. There were 5 new wide releases this weekend. Novocaine came in at number 1. We'll get to that momentarily. $8.7 million. That's very low
Yeah.
for the number 1 film in America.
Yeah.
The box office, here's the thing. The thing I want to talk to you guys about is something that we mentioned when Sean Baker gave his speech at the Academy Awards and also at the DGAs, which is about the theatrical window and the sense that, like, cat's out of the bag officially. Like, word's out to the common person that if you don't go to the movies in the first weekend, the movie's probably going to be on VOD within 2 or 3 weeks.
Mickey 17 being the obvious.
Mickey 17 is
Yeah.
coming to VOD according to Warner Brothers March 25th. That's 17 days after it was released. We talked about Black Bag on Friday on the show. Did you see it over the
I
weekend?
have not gotten a chance to see it yet.
Well, you'll be able to see it on
Crazily
VOD
enough.
probably in 10 days.
Right. But I'm not going to do that.
Also, you're the problem.
I had a lot of
Social obligations.
and
that's true.
TV work to do this weekend.
Okay.
Yeah, I
All
know.
right. but
Nevertheless, most movies that are not Odyssey-sized events, people are just going to wait. And that's how this is now.
This is the point, is that 90% of people in America are like, I really want to see this. I just don't have time this weekend.
Yes.
That should be an allowable thing to happen.
Absolutely.
In American
Part of the
society.
reason why
It's
I
like,
was...
I have a month and a half to see this. You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Black Bag is an interesting example of this because this is a film, I think, that is meant for older audiences. By older, I mean somewhere between 35 and 100.
Right.
And
Me, yeah.
most of those people were not even aware of it.
Yeah.
And they'll probably become aware of it when it hits a streaming service. And so people don't watch TV the way that they used to. Viral marketing doesn't really apply for adult movies. It's very cool that Steven Soderbergh got $50 million to make a movie like this, but I don't even know how you could expect a movie like this to make a ton of money. Now, maybe it will be a huge hit on VOD. Tom Quinn noted, I think on the Town podcast, that Anora made 8 figures in VOD profits, which is obviously Best Picture winner, much buzzed about movie, but that's still a lot of money. We don't have any transparency in any of that stuff, so it's hard to know what it's making up for. But I don't think, as long as Hollywood is run by people who are more worried about the short term, i.e. saving their jobs, than the long term, which is preserving a certain theatrical movie-going experience, that I don't think this is ever going to change.
Yeah. Well, you'll have your good times and bad times, right? Like, you're going to have weeks like this where I think the disappointing part about it is Novocaine, Black Bag, and Mickey 17. And I say this is part of the problem because obviously I haven't gone to the movies in 10 days or whatever, but I do watch a lot of stuff. Those are 3 original films, which is the thing that we're craving. Yep. Even though you could say some of them are a little bit derivative. They're still original stories, and nobody showed up.
Any thoughts?
I mean, it does almost feel at this point like there was a collective understanding between the studios of okay, we don't really have confidence in any of these movies, so we're just going to put them all on the same day and just write it off as one big loss, because now we understand our business cycle in terms of either it's the Odyssey, it's a huge event movie, or it's IP franchise, or it's something that's going to put a lot of butts in theaters, or this is loss leader weekend for our VOD and streaming business.
Right.
And so we're doing the marketing now, so you'll watch it in 2 weeks.
You're touching on something that I've been noting, which is obviously, and we do it here, we do it at the Ringer a lot, is that kind of pocket watching about how much movies cost, whether movies are in the black, whether movies were disasters, or this administration at Warner's or this administration at Disney is in trouble for the way that they've shepherded their projects. I think that they just need to do a much better job. I think the PVOD thing could start to become the it'll have a second life on video of our era if they did a better job communicating what you said about Anora, and that this movie actually was profitable, or it was great to have it in the theaters for such a long run. Obviously, the Oscars gave it a bump, but for the most part, people were spending $20 to watch it at home. And yeah, it would have been better if they had gone and seen it at a theater and seen it collectively as Sean Baker intended, and I'm sure Steven Soderbergh intended, and I'm sure Bong intended. But if you can get to that point of but it did really well once people were able to just click buy, I think that would change the narrative a little bit. Or do you think that that's just
it benefits the winners and hurts the losers? The movies that didn't succeed in theaters and also don't succeed on PVOD. How do we characterize that? Once they introduce transparency, which I don't think they ever will in this format, but once they introduce it, then you'll be wow, not only did this movie only make $5 million at the box office, it only made $800,000 in PVOD purchases. Yeah. So if I were the studios, I wouldn't want to release that information. This our demand for data benefits us as ostensibly journalists, or at least observers of cultural information. For them, it's bottom line oriented, and a little bit more mystery here allows them to kind of shift the playing field as they want. 17 days might ultimately go back up to 50 days or 60 days, or it could also go down to 7 days. You know, this is going to evolve over time. It feels like Warner Brothers and Universal in particular have kind of settled on this 2.5 week model, and by all accounts that are shared with us, it worked really well for Universal on a number of movies over time. If everyone starts doing that, I wonder what effect that has. Once Sony signs up for this, once Neon and A24 sign up for this, once Disney signs up for this, that would really be the final domino in this equation. Disney, even now, they make you wait for Disney Plus.
Yeah.
And like Moana 2 just went on Disney Plus. That came out in November.
Brave New World will be PVOD before it goes to Disney Plus, right?
For sure. Yeah, probably soon.
And that
too.
movie is like clawing its way to something.
It's going to get barely to 400 million, which is not good. In the context of Marvel movies, that's very low. It's not an out-and-out disaster like the Marvels was, but it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
But A24 produced Thunderbolts, so we got that going for us.
Yeah.
It's not a mistake to me at all that this is the weekend that The Electric State was released. And in theory, a lot of the time that people would devote to watching movies or going to a movie theater could have been spent watching this movie on Netflix.
The problem, it's me.
Yeah.
You watched it, and I watched it.
Well, I watched it because I have this job, but I guess there are people
I watched
out
it
there.
because I was on this pod and I wanted to talk about it, and I'm, the Russos are my arch nemesis.
Yeah.
But that 2 hours I would have spent at Black Bag probably on Sunday.
Yeah.
This is the latest in a long line of mega tentpole streaming only Netflix movies. It's the latest movie from the Russos, who of course made 4 Marvel films and are going to make the next 2 Avengers movies. It's not an original story. It's based on the illustrated novel The Electric State by Simon Stålenhag. That illustrated novel was crowdfunded, which I thought was fascinating because there couldn't be anything less crowdfunded than The Electric State, the movie.
Did everybody who crowdfunded it get a piece of the 320? Is that why it cost so much?
I don't think that's how that worked.
Okay.
The movie stars Millie Bobby Brown, Chris Pratt, Kiwi Kwan, Jason Alexander, the voice of Woody Harrelson, the voice of Anthony Mackie, the voice of Brian Cox, the voice of Jenny Slate, Giancarlo Esposito, and Stanley Tucci.
Giancarlo Esposito playing the Butcher of Schenectady.
Yes. Your old title. The movie is about... What's it about? It's about a teenage girl.
I want you to do this.
Okay. Because I was really paying very close attention when I watched it too. I definitely was not multitasking or watching some of it with my 3-year-old.
Who loved it.
I mean, he was like, "What's that yellow robot doing? Where are they going? What are they doing now? What are they doing now?"
Then they've already won.
Yeah. Okay. So Millie Bobby Brown is a teenager and
Named?
No idea.
Michelle.
And it's 1994.
1990 in the beginning of the film.
Well, I'm starting. Let me do it my way.
I just didn't know if you were starting before or after the robot war.
I was getting there. Would you just chill out? It is 1994, and we are living in a post-Civil War society, the war being between the humans and the robots. And Millie Bobby Brown is blonde now. But before the war, she had dark hair and she had a little brother
named Chris.
His name is Chris? Yeah. Who she loved a lot. And
little guy Chris.
and I don't think their parents are around anymore.
They aren't. They died in a car accident.
And that's right. That's right. Because the robots didn't. She didn't lose her family to the robots. She lost her family to a car accident.
Ironically, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's 1994 and she's really blonde and wearing eyeliner and she's pissed off. And then so somehow the yellow robot finds her.
She's visited by a yellow robot.
The yellow robot
Cosmo
finds her. And
that robot is a representation of her brother's favorite TV character.
Oh, okay. And also turns out to be piloted or inhabited, or if you want to get in a robot consciousness, that's your choice, by her brother, who it turns out is alive, and somewhere, and is like powering the robot
and trying to lead her back to him.
He was on. He's in Seattle,
right?
Just FYI.
And so
great note.
But also robots, because they lost the robot war, are like illegal. But
the survivors of the robot war live in Arizona.
They've been sent to the exclusion zone.
yeah, which I thought was like, is references to internment camps, and I just thought was wildly offensive.
That is what it is.
I just like want to let you know, I was like, wow, this is extremely not okay. And then, so they have these robots, and she needs this yellow robot in order to help her find her brother, but now they're like kind of outlaws. And then somehow she joins up with Chris Pratt, who has bad hair, and another like robot who's much bigger. And he's like a bounty hunter, like type, not bounty hunter, but like
I think the question was, what is this movie about? Not what is every plot detail of the movie.
Well, together they're going to find her brother. And then meanwhile, Stanley Tucci is evil Steve Jobs and is trying to get everyone to wear his little helmets and live in the metaverse.
Because he wants
Mark
to
Zuckerberg.
be with his mother who made him stuffed peppers, but actually didn't. It's an idealized version of his mom.
Correct.
Who was an alcoholic and a mean woman when she was sober.
Okay. And so it's about Millie Bobby Brown trying to find her brother with the help of some illegal robots fighting against Stanley Tucci.
That's what it's about.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it's about.
It's one of the worst movies of the year. It's one of the worst movies of the decade. It is hard to judge the movie in a vacuum. There are a couple of things that you could say this wasn't bad, but it being a $320 million movie that is served exclusively on the Netflix service, an intended tentpole, but only at home, made by filmmakers who have mistaken their caretakerdom for creativity. It is pretty much a fiasco. It's like derivative in many different directions. It's the Terminator meets WALL-E,
Ready Player
the
One.
Creator meets Ready Player One. Lots of stuff you've seen before. Really just some of the worst star acting you're ever going to come across. I mean, both Millie Bobby Brown and Chris Pratt are terrible in this movie. They are so checked out. They clearly are green screening. Like, they have Millie Bobby Brown has no idea how to act opposite these characters.
She checked in. Like, she's a Netflix star that they're trying to like extend the universe. And they're trying to bridge some of her younger fans into like quote unquote more grown up material, but this is rated PG-13. There is, I guess, like robot violence, but anyway, but could she ever do anything other than this? Like she is doing what she was cast to do.
I would, if you watch Enola Holmes, which isn't good, but they've made 2 of those now. They're Sherlock Holmes extended universe movies that Netflix makes. She's better in those movies.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say she's like amazing, but she's like dead-eyed in this movie.
I think that she wasn't my problem. Like of all the things that were going on in this movie, I think that this is what happens when the Chewbacca cheat goes wide. So the Chewbacca cheat is something that I ranted about years ago. I think it's in the last of the Star Wars sequels, but maybe it's in Force Awakens. I can't actually remember. But there's this sequence in one of those movies where Chewbacca is flying away from a planet.
It's in The Rise of Skywalker.
And his spaceship explodes. And we, as a collective audience and the characters in the film, are all led to believe that Chewbacca is dead. It's very sad. Chewbacca is a beloved character.
Yeah. Excuse me.
What?
I know who Chewbacca is.
I know. I'm more like podcasting.
Yeah. Okay.
And you are basically manipulated into thinking that Chewbacca is dead, but then you get the serotonin hit because Chewbacca's still alive. And what you realize is that like, oh, this is what they're going to do. They're going to actually play on the idea that something real has happened, something emotional, something devastating, something consequential has happened, but not really. Not really, because we could not possibly impact, like, what if we want to do Wookiee World? What if we want to have Chewbacca lead this? What if we can't kill a Wookiee and then not have him be at Star Wars Galaxy Cruise?
Yep.
So this movie does that basically across the board. It's like no one is actually ever really dead. The Civil War that you're talking about takes place between animatronic logos like Mr. Peanut and people who are wearing Apple Vision Pros and fighting with drone robot bodies. So I don't even know what kind of casualties there were in this war. They never actually engage in that. Not that I want this to be like an Alex Garland film, but like it is always basically creating an out for itself.
Mm-hmm.
And even like a moment towards the end of the film where Chris Pratt's buddy, voiced by Anthony Mackie, you think dies,
A robot.
is immediately reborn as just the littler robot inside of like the little robot inside of a big robot. And you're just like, oh, so that we had 30 seconds of grief and thinking that this character might have lost his friend and now he's just got his buddy back. It's always cheating you. It is always bullshit. And it's always like, I don't even know if it really is offensive enough to get angry about. It just makes me bummed out.
I think it's because the movie is very dark and very like attempting to be James Cameron that we lose sight of the fact that if this were marketed more as a movie for kids, if this were more like The Goonies or more like E.T., which is really ultimately what it's in the vein of, you probably wouldn't hold what you just described against it.
No.
But because it basically is like, this is a mega IP event movie, then all of that stuff comes to the fore. And so the lack of stakes feels terrible. Like in The Goonies, we're not like, why do we kill one of the Goonies? You know, like no, that's not how you think about a movie that's made for 11-year-olds. But this movie, because of the incredible success the Russos have had, because of like this long string of IP movies that we've seen from this service, Red Notice, Extraction, Six Underground, no offense to Triple Frontier, but Triple Frontier, like there's a long chain of really mediocre, mostly movies that are like this, that like are meant to be like, you used to get Predator and now you get this.
Yeah.
And so it hasn't supplanted the Goonies, it's supplanted mainstream action movies, I think.
I sort of. I think maybe we're taking it a little bit personally, like because we had to watch it, and I mean it's like catastrophically bad. I hated it, and I did take offense to Millie Bobby Brown, and you just like fast forwarded through Mr. Peanut, voiced by Woody Harrelson, just like as a part of the
Jimmy
fight,
Carter.
you know, which is just there's just a level of, and I guess that's supposed to be some sort of like corporate satire, but it's not. But it's just all.
I mean, this is a bigger issue if you want to get into kind of like the
politics
subtext of the film.
The
is that
subtext is like absolute total garbage.
It's just it doesn't represent anything. Like it is trying to be, I think, a kind of satire.
Oh, I thought it was supposed to be like an allegory about how we should be like, everybody deserves like dignity in life,
including our robots.
Yeah.
I don't I mean, that was what the creator was as well.
But then
I don't really know what that means.
I want robots to be free. But then she gives a whole speech about how like we exchange molecules as people. So there's definitely some human supremacy like built into some of it.
We just saw this in Mickey 17. In Mickey 17, the creepers are the other, and you're meant to have, but they are living creatures.
Mm-hmm.
They're not robots, and they're not Mr. Peanut or a Dr. Pepper can or Kurt Loder's disembodied AI-enhanced voice to make him seem 30 years younger, though not showing us his face while he reads a report from MTV News about the robot wars.
Yeah.
The kind of feint towards 90s culture, which is this interesting moment where...
But there is no feint. It's like they played Danzig once. Like that's...
Yeah, there's some needle drops.
The score at the end, they do like the Westworld thing, but with Wonderwall into Yoshimi, and that was like when I was ready to flip my
There's
TV.
Other stuff. I mean, Jason Alexander is a feint towards that. There's like a number
but
of
it's shot
things
like an Amblin movie in the 80s, sort of. You know, it's supposed to be like, look at like the wonder with which they view like the mall full of robots.
So what I was going to say, like, it sucks. It like really sucks. And in a lot of ways, as we were discussing at a child's birthday party yesterday, like it is a concentration of everything that is wrong with current, like big budget studio, like filmmaking, like everything that we hate, including the Russo brothers getting out there and talking their bullshit, like all boiled down into one horrible movie. Is it like the reason that like we still have action, you know, is it the worst thing that's ever happened in the end of civilization? I don't know, but it's really bad.
No, I think because we know what the budget is and we know that comes in theory, though not in actuality, at the expense of $10 $32 million movies or $20 $16 million movies. You know, the whole Core Jefferson calculation.
Sure.
Totally.
Obviously, that isn't what Netflix would do. Netflix is doing this very purposefully. They've done it over and over and over again. I forgot to mention The Gray Man the last time the Russos did this, and they made a really awful,
I had way more
bastardized
fun with
version.
the Gray Man.
Yeah,
I think
that's
they're
'cause
both pretty dire.
Yeah, but the Gray Man, like, at least had like
Ryan Gosling.
like a very open cynicism and dark. Like, it was.
I would argue
basically-
that's worse because they wasted high level talent. At least in this, it's
Oh.
like Chris Pratt is in the middle of one of the least interesting star decades in a long time.
he's just playing Han Solo over and over
again.
Yeah.
I think also these movies, as opposed to like a big budget failure at the box office, they hold like a negative space in our cultural memory. They don't. They're either awful or we don't think about them. They don't really have fans. They have not created any other business for Netflix, which is one of the things I find most curious about this. Is there's no
Adam
attempt.
Project 2.
Yeah, but there's no attempt to like build a theme park or to merchandise these things. They exist only in this closed loop of entertainment that Netflix, and it is their business model, so I understand it. But I think the fact that it doesn't have any other relationship in the world other than just going to this place feels so anathema to what movies are, which is like a place for everybody to be together and have fun together. And sometimes it's in a movie theater. Sometimes it's at Disneyland. I'm not saying Disneyland is like a sacred space or anything, but it is like kind of an extension of culture that allows people to feel connected again.
Yeah.
This is the opposite of that. This is a Neurocaster. This is the people in this movie being locked in on this giant thing that is meant to distract you from the world. We're obviously having a moment together personally about it. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But it's only because it's like gun to our head. You know, it's like this is the biggest movie of the weekend by far. And so we have to talk about it. And so, you know, it's been interesting watching the Russos do the press tour. They've said a number of things that are very silly. I thought it was very amusing that they pointed out the fact that Netflix shouldn't be doing this, that they shouldn't be
Yeah, they
dumping
say that
$300
as
million.
they walk out
Yeah.
the door to go back to Marvel to make what will probably be two of the biggest movies of the century.
Yes.
You know?
You particularly don't like what they represent, which is interesting because they come from something that you not only cover but admire.
Yeah, I think that what they had to me, okay, so like, there's nothing personal against those guys, obviously, who gives a shit, but like I think that what bothers me is that one thing that sort of defined them on the first 10 years of their career was a very like practical humility. Like they were very good at like figuring out like how can we elevate whatever material we happen to be engaged with, whether it's an episode of Community or, you know, like a Captain America movie or what have you. And then after Endgame, I think they bought into this idea that they were Spielberg and that they were going to change movie making and that they could basically start DreamWorks with Agbo, which is their company. And hearing them talk about like going back to Marvel with all the tools and the technological innovations that they've developed at their company, when I'm like, you guys routinely put out stuff that is the definition of slop now. Like Citadel is the worst fucking thing I've ever seen, like by far.
That's
and
their series on Amazon.
yeah, and it's like all of these things, like there's almost this weird perverse like smirk about how much they cost. And you're never like, man, I can see it. I can see how you guys spent. I can see every dime on the screen. You know, it's like there's this weird blindfolded participation by all the creative community that comes into these films where they're just like, I'll fucking do the voice for Mr. Peanut, man. Like, just tell me where to sign. Like,
I have a real like shame on you attitude about Woody and Stanley Tucci and like people who know way better than to do a movie like this. And you know, mailing it in is mailing it in. Millie Bobby Brown and Chris Pratt are different. They're like trying to be stars. This is a big star project. I kind of understand that. You know, Giancarlo Esposito, this is the second movie in a row this year where he showed up to be the bad guy and like with a nothing part and nothing really
where he
to do.
basically is like sitting at a table and having his face on a TV screen somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. And possibly filmed everything way after, you know, or like from a like his closet.
That's the thing about this
never
movie
left
is that
Hawaii.
this one didn't really feel like one of those like, oh, they didn't even have a script for this. Like this actually feels like a pretty complete story that has like a beginning and middle and end.
Mhm.
It's so flat. It's so like there's no dynamic range between any of the set pieces. You're never like, oh my God, can you believe it? Like this is happening. It's just like, oh yeah, you know, no shit. Like there's a mall full of robots who are living in peace and harmony.
Now we go to the deserted mall and the like
Yeah.
apocalypse
And now
story.
all of a sudden they took a submarine to Seattle and they're gonna attack the evil corporation's building. And you're right. Like this is almost like, would it be better not to acknowledge it at all? But I suppose the way you tied it in, which is like, it's hard not to look at the box office weekend and then assume that most people who are like, I literally have 2 hours. I can do one of 5 things. And it's like they probably watched this. And then I think a lot of adults or people who are looking for, I would imagine they watched Adolescence, which is the number one show on Netflix and is 4 hours long. So it is a really tough fight that theaters have on their hands if you put it up against this.
What do you think the energy is going to be like in Vegas when we go to
when we
CinemaCon?
go for well, my energy is going to be.
I think that will be different from the theater owners and the studios.
No, it's not good because to Chris's point about there. I think there were many people. I think a majority of America who said, "I don't have time to go to the theater to see a movie this weekend," and I think that they do that most weekends, and that's bad. I don't even know if I buy that they were sitting there thinking, okay, well, I have 2 hours and I can't make it to the theater, but instead I'm going to turn on the electric state. I think the mentality of most people is like, I definitely don't have time to go to the theater. And I guess I'll just like click 2 buttons and not pay attention to something and like not remember this.
And this thing has that Netflix movie thing where they're constantly describing what is on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of don't even have to watch because all of the dialogue is just about like, I'm sad because my parents died. I'm also sad because I lost a mother. You know what I mean? Like there's never any nuance to like any of the drama. Like it's self-evident like that everybody's like, I'm sad because of this. It's like,
well, I think an overlooked part of this in particular, if we're going to make it a binary, and it's not necessarily a binary, but let's just say for the sake of this conversation that it is that in people's minds, the electric state is free. That's a fixed cost that they pay every month, and they look at Netflix maybe every day. Maybe they only look at it eight times a month, but that's more than they go to the movie theater.
Yeah.
Going to the movie theater is $40, $60, $80, $100. Netflix, firing it up at 8 p.m. after you put your kids to bed, in our case, or after you've had a long day at work, or you have a dead afternoon on a Saturday.
And if you go to the movie theater, there's
a
guy on his phone, and if there's and like the projection isn't great or something.
Right.
Yeah, but even the financial point is essential. But I do also think they're not even. They think of Netflix as Netflix and not as like I'm going to watch a movie on Netflix.
Totally.
Like it's almost a different activity, like a different art form, and
which is what they wanted.
Yes,
they wanted it to be that fixed that ecosystem experience, not a wider experience. And the fact that they are like licensing fewer movies now, but the stuff that they do license is all of the stuff that they could basically like pretend like it's a Netflix original, even though it came out from Lionsgate in 2012 and it stars Jason Statham. So like it is all part of a very, as always, a very sophisticated strategy that they deploy. But when it's in the service, especially at the highest end of the budget, in the service of something like this, I find it very, very depressing.
I agree with you. So here's the one thing I will say, and that it's my hope. I think they've gone away from this largely in movies, and I know they had turnover in the executive department of that in terms of their film stuff.
Yeah.
They still will do things with television that nobody else would ever get the spotlight on these kinds of shows, whether it's Ripley from last year or Adolescence from this year. I can't believe that many people get an opportunity to check out something so formally inventive, so beautifully acted, so beautifully written, so important. I wish that they could do that with film. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like if we're going to take the poison, please give us some medicine.
The thing that is missing, because I mean, look, this is like Roma, The Irishman, Marriage Story. Like they've put out a lot of great movies over the years.
But there's something wrong with the way those movies.
The Killer, the Knives Out movies.
Yeah.
Like they put out a ton of great movies. To me, it's more about shifting to being more like an old studio, which is what I want so many studios to do, which is like have a real development team that actually develops properties, not just with insanely powerful directors. Because for the most part, what they do is they in the past, they have recruited your Martin Scorsese's, your David Fincher's, your Jane Campion's, your Alfonso Cuarón's, and saying like, what's the one that nobody else will make? We'll make it for you. Which can create radical art, and maybe win awards, but usually not.
Yeah.
But then those movies also go into the negative zone that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And then they start to feel as though they don't exist. There's no physical representation of them. They don't play rep theaters. They only exist inside this closed system. And so they don't feel as much like a contribution to the wider art form. That's not good. If they change the model, which they're not going to do, but if they change the model, obviously the movies could go into the movie theaters. They could be sold physically, whatever, all the things that I would want. But they would probably live on in a deeper and more true way in addition to that, a movie like Novocaine, I'll use this as a pivot point.
Sure.
To me, kind of feels like what they should be doing more of.
Yeah.
And we saw with Rebel Ridge and Carry On last year that there's a huge audience. Matt Bellany and Lucas Shaw talked about this a few weeks ago when they were looking at like what are the most watched movies on their service. I don't think they're going to make a lot more $300 million movies. I do think they're going to make a lot more $60 million movies or $50 million movies. In the case of Novocaine, I think it costs like $18 million, which is, well, you saw it?
Yes. I was one of 2 people in a 500-seat theater on Saturday afternoon. So I think 500. I, did my best to count.
Roughly.
Yeah.
You counted 500 seats?
What?
counted 500
I
individual
counted 20
seats?
in my aisle, and then I started doing some multiplication,
Nice.
and then I stopped.
Wow. Math. This is the new movie from Dan Burke and Robert Olson, who made a couple of movies that I've liked. Villains, Significant Other, which was on Paramount Plus a couple of years ago. It stars Jack Quaid.
Yeah.
America's Good Boy.
Yeah.
The nice boy of Hollywood.
Yeah.
This is his second genre movie of the year that he's headlining after Companion. Also stars Amber Midthunder, Ray Nicholson. I have some thoughts on Ray
Amber
Nicholson.
Midthunder from our
Yeah,
beloved
sure.
Predator.
Yeah, absolutely. She also appears
Or
in
Prey,
Opus.
rather.
yeah.
Yeah,
Prey.
Prey.
Yeah.
It's about an assistant bank manager who can't feel pain, who, after a bank robbery,
Like physical pain.
he can't feel physical pain. He can feel emotional pain
Yeah.
for sure. We see
Yeah.
that throughout the film.
Yeah.
And after a bank robbery, his budding love interest is kidnapped, and he decides that he's going to chase after these bank robbers and try to track her down. And because he can't feel pain, he can
Yeah.
survive in this journey in ways that others would not be able to. I remember when you first saw this trailer, you were like, I feel like we got too much of this stuff. I feel like with the
fake Wick.
Post John Wick.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just watched Love Hurts.
The Kiwi Kwan movie.
The Kiwi Kwan movie, which I thought was very bad. Maybe having seen Love Hurts has made me like Novocaine more, but I kind of liked it. I think mostly because Jack Quaid is very winning, and you basically need your star to be great for this movie to work. And I'm on board with him, so I liked it.
Me too. It is amazing because you spend a lot of time with just him on screen, and then you can just like see the Meg Ryan take over his body in certain moments in that very winning way, which is just kind of fun.
See
also,
the Meg Ryan, yeah. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Like in the interstitial moments, and it is part of that his ability to ingratiate you
Yes,
to this
you have
character.
empathy for him. Yeah.
Yeah. I liked the first 45 minutes of it.
Okay.
And then at some point it's like, what's your definition of fun? And is your definition of fun watching his thumb bend 45 different ways? And
That part was tough.
yeah, I mean, it is
Yeah.
gross, and
Yeah.
that is what it's supposed to be. But so I got over it a little bit. I liked the Nepo baby square off
Mhm.
at the end
With Ray and Jack. Yeah.
and that's another one where you can see it jump out a little bit. So it was fine. I think that you're quite right. It would have played very well at home on a Saturday night if I were sitting down and guess I want to watch a movie.
And I think it will when it goes to VOD.
Yes.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think that anyone consuming Electric State is sitting down thinking, and now I'm gonna watch a tub of popcorn and Friday movie night. It's just kind of
Now I'm going to watch I hope we all get to that point where we're just staring at the popcorn.
here we go. You
Yeah.
know, I think that as Chris said, is slop is widget
Mhm.
content, and this feels like a fun mid-budget movie that plenty of people could watch at home happily.
Who are these directors?
They made the movie Significant Other with Jake Lacey.
Oh, yeah.
You remember the
Yeah, of course. In the forest, right?
forest,
Yeah, that was
which
cool.
is pretty cool.
Yeah, that was a real
They're good.
COVID
They're
era
talented.
one.
They definitely. I think the movie is very episodic in the final 45 minutes, as Amanda
Yeah.
said, where it's just sort of he keeps getting himself into incredibly violent showdowns with people, and they
Yeah.
can't hurt him, which becomes iterative at a certain point.
Right.
Like you said, the first 45 minutes, I thought they were pretty adept at the rom-com stuff.
Yes.
This burgeoning romance between Amber Midthunder, who also I thought was very good in this.
Yeah. Good
was
supporting
good.
cast.
It worked a lot. Yeah, Matt Walsh is super funny in this
I
movie.
know,
Betty
yeah.
Gabriel is super funny in this movie. I thought it was better than I thought it was going to be. Is ultimately where I landed on it.
Also starts with a 90s kid. There's Everybody Hurts R.E.M. playing
Yes.
like loudly throughout, which is like very funny.
A number of very good needle drops throughout
yeah.
this movie.
They never address whether Kurt Cobain is still alive in the version of Reality in Electric State.
Well, let's call the Russos. You have their number. Give them a call. One last thing about this Ray Nicholson I mentioned is Jack Nicholson's son.
Mhm.
He's making a bid now.
Yeah.
He's been in movies a little bit in the last 5 years, but I saw another movie that he was in that I think came out this past weekend called Borderline. You guys familiar with this movie?
No.
Small indie starring Samara Weaving, also set in the 90s, also set in the mid 90s. She plays a pop star, I think named Sophia, and he plays her stalker, her mentally unwell stalker. And the movie is very much told from, it's very king of comedy. It's not quite funny. It's not quite scary, but it exists in that zone between those two. And he's really, really good. And you obviously are looking at Jack Nicholson's son, and he's making Jack Nicholson faces.
Yes.
He can't not go crazy the way that Jack does. But in the same way with Jack Quaid, where I'm like, I don't know, man. Like being a nepo baby doesn't mean you're untalented. Like you have your parents' DNA. Like
the essential presence. Like when it jumps out, it's like, oh, that same quality that makes like the way that your eyebrows go up, and you'd be like, I'm leaning in. Like I'm charmed by you, Jack Quaid. Like it's there.
Yeah. So I liked that other film with Ray, and I thought he was a really good villain in this movie. Very, very pro forma, not surprising, but very good at what he was doing. Let's go back to streaming movies.
Yeah.
Let's talk about The Gorge.
Oh, sure.
Which we've overlooked.
We left it.
Yeah.
We never got to it on this show. You never got to it at all.
That's okay.
No, I chose to watch a different movie.
So Chris and I are going to attempt to share with you in the same way you shared with us the story of the Electric State, what happens in The Gorge. See if we can do this as a duo, CR.
Okay. I mean, Miles Teller plays a soldier. I mean, I honestly could have all my loved ones dangling over a shark pit.
Yeah.
And it's on me to remember the names of the characters in this movie. And they would just be chum. I would not be able to save them.
Same. I don't know what their
Miles
names are.
Teller plays a soldier with PTSD who's kind of kicking around, I think like the sort of Ventura Carpinteria area based on the skyline. And he gets hired by, he thinks, the CIA.
So
just like a really overcast kind of
all right. I was just gonna say, what are the identifying characteristics of that skyline?
More just that it's just like a lot of gray, like beach haze, like the fog is rolled in.
Okay.
And he gets hired by Sigourney Weaver, who he believes is CIA. There's only one person in this conference room, and she's just like, I'm in the CIA. He's like, totally believe
For the record, he's a sniper.
Yeah, he's
not
sniper,
just a soldier.
bad. Sorry, he's the best.
Okay.
He's what?
Well, he has some
And he has-
competition.
But so is he out of the game?
He is out of the game. He's home. He's rotated back to the world. He's hanging out in Carpinteria. And he gets hired by Sigourney Weaver to do a job on a parallel track, another plot. Anya Taylor-Joy plays a Eastern European Balkan woman who's also a sniper. Who
is she in Carpinteria?
No, she's in like Romania or like Croatia
Where
or something.
actually?
I don't know. I can't remember. But they are both brought to this space called the Gorge. The Gorge is colloquially described as the gate to hell, which I think would have been a better movie if it had been that. Because instead, it is a giant pit guarded by two towers on one side and the other. And you're not supposed to talk to your sniper over on the other side. You're just supposed to keep what's in the gorge from coming out. It's just basically like you're like the stopgap method from stopping whatever demonic presence is down there from getting out. And there are demonic presences.
Oh.
The reason for this, I've been trying to think through, because it's actually a great setup.
It's awesome. Scott Derrickson has incredible first acts.
I was just going to say that. He always sets his movies up so well and sometimes pays them off for me, not always. But this is the director of Sinister, Doctor Strange, The Black Phone. The setup is that you've got these two snipers on opposite ends, essentially on opposite ends even of the sort of like international relations. And they have made this tacit agreement, unspoken in the shadows, that they will protect the world from what is inside of the gorge by I don't know how long the cycles are. Is it 1 year? Is it 3 years? However long the cycles are. Cycling in one elite sniper to shoot down whatever would be climbing up from the gorge to attempt to get into the world at large. The problem is in this case that these two insanely hot people have been enlisted as the snipers, and they fall in love from across the way.
They do the
write
Love
on
Actually
boards. They literally Love Actually it. And they have like nights together where they like share wine across the way, and they play music for each other.
Is it like we're using like binoculars? Like
Yes.
Zoom?
Binoculars
What are we doing?
and writing on a whiteboard to be like,
because they have their scopes and everything with their rifles, and they, he looks like Miles Teller and she looks like Anya Taylor-Joy. They're like, I want to fuck this sniper across the way who's from Bulgaria or whatever.
Okay.
That'd
be like an awesome Joachim von Trier movie. I want to fuck this sniper.
The movie, part of the appeal of the movie is part of what works against it, which is that it's 5 different movies. It is an elite spy sniper movie. It is a story about young love.
Okay.
It is eventually a video game movie because, of course, they have to go into the Gorge. Well, first they have to get together. They get together. They have a magical night together.
In whose tower?
In Anya's, and it's the sin. It's the original sin. It's Adam and Eve biting the apple.
Okay.
Yes.
And it's like they take their eye off the ball, which is the Gorge.
What would the international relations like parallel?
Well, it's
to
good
this
that
be?
you asked that because we find out as it goes on that what's actually in the bottom of the Gorge is not, in fact, the gate to hell, but rather a massive military industrial complex bioweapon experimentation zone.
Yes, it's gone terribly awry.
Labs and like they've just like all the people who've been down there since like World War II have basically become deformed demons. So you get down there and it's
giant
essentially
spiders.
It's just basically,
Why do they have to go down there?
one of them falls, right? Yeah, and then the other goes down after them
to save them. Yeah,
right. When Miles
Why do
Teller
they fall? Because they're just like,
when Miles
really
Teller was
getting
going
after
back
it?
from his date,
he needs to
okay.
return to his post.
His cord gets cut.
Okay.
His like little
Oh, does he like
zip line gets
zip
cut.
line over?
Yeah.
Cool.
Um,
You guys into ziplining?
The moment all the way
No.
up until
Neither.
I think some of the dialogue is really shoddy in this movie, but the moment up until the cord snapped, I was like, I'm pretty much in on this. Like, I really want to know where this is going.
Yeah.
As soon as they get into the Gorge, I
Hard no.
hated it. Hated it.
yeah, there's like
Hated it.
demon soldiers with like personalities, and it's kind of like what it sounds like what happens with Novocaine, which is a really good hour and then an hour of like
Yeah.
kind of monotonous action.
So is Sigourney Weaver ultimately not?
We find
from
out
the
that
CIA?
she is in fact not CIA. He just
Yeah.
didn't ask for ID, and she was she's employed or runs the bioweapon company.
How would you appropriately ask for ID from the CIA?
I don't know if it works like with a cop, like where you like you could get to ask like are you
license and registration,
yeah, I think
please.
the CIA operates under subterfuge anyway.
Right.
So the idea of them being like, by the way, I'm CIA, in any case, this is when we write the history books about cinema, this will be the purest distillation of COVID era filmmaking. It's 2 people who are rarely in the same scene together. There's only like 3 other people in the movie.
Yep.
Most of it is VFX for the
Okay.
second hour.
Cool.
I don't know why this movie took like 5 years to come out.
It was clearly made for the big screen, and they just shuttled it to streaming.
But it was always an Apple movie.
It was always an Apple movie,
Yeah.
but Apple released Napoleon, they released Killers of the Flower Moon. It was in this time, they're releasing F1, like they're still releasing movies.
Yeah.
It's a big budget movie. This is a big movie. This movie has a Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross score. Like was meant to be a mainstream movie. And I could be wrong, but my gut is that they just looked at it and they're like, this isn't good enough. We can't do the typical marketing spend against this to put it in a movie theater.
So they make it to the bottom of the bioweapons.
Yeah, and then
they defeat Sigourney Weaver.
They find she's just still up there
Okay.
in her helicopter, but they find a Jeep that they drive up the side of a mountain
Oh.
or of the gorge
Like you do.
because they have a winch and they get to the top and then they set off a bunch of charges so that Sigourney Weaver's come in her helicopter and the helicopter gets blown up and falls into the gorge.
And then like
gets her
it
just
all
desserts.
explodes.
In theory, all of the testing.
Where
all
is
of
the gorge?
demons.
And then they, because like they're separated sort of as they escape.
Yeah.
And Anya Taylor-Joy gets to become a barmaid in like the Positano Coast.
Okay.
And one day Miles Teller shows up and is like, I hear,
Okay, so
I
it's
hear
like
the
Born.
rap. Yeah.
At the end. Yeah, that's beautiful.
It's like
Okay.
Michael Caine in
Yeah.
Italy at the end of Dark Knight.
He didn't want to
Yeah.
bury another
Yeah.
Batman.
Okay. Well,
Um,
that sounds
This
bad.
movie's not good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of talent attached to it.
Mhm.
Sort of.
Do you think, are you with me? It would have been cool if it was hell. It would have been cool if
100%,
you were
yeah.
like,
Why
hell
is this
real?
not a John Carpenter movie? Why is it like a weird Resident Evil movie?
Yeah.
I don't they basically turned it into Resident Evil at the end, and
Okay.
it's not very
Well.
good.
I think we're casting too many hot people to do jobs that not hot people do. I think this
Great
is
take.
Yes.
a movie that I think, to your point about John Carpenter, it should have been like a James Woods kind of guy should have been doing this.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, it should not be always like Miles Teller looking like pretty hot, but actually quite bored with the movie he's in, which I'm a little bit nervous about for him.
Yeah.
He's off track.
Yeah.
He's off track. He had more momentum than you could possibly imagine after Maverick, and he's way off track. So what are we gonna do?
I don't know.
I know the Eagles are not off track. I know that in theory he's doing great.
He's doing great. He was on Saturday Night Live 50.
Yeah, he was at the Oscars.
They lost their house in the fire.
That's terrible.
So-
I wish him no ill will.
People are sending him Grateful Dead
Nobody
shirts,
gets his
so-
back more than me and him.
Yeah, I know.
see so much in him.
Yeah.
And I just want better for him. Let's talk about Last Breath quickly.
Okay.
You didn't see this yet,
I
right?
didn't.
Okay.
I
Would you
gotta-
recommend
but
Chris see it?
So it's basically like Apollo 13 underwater.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
But without
Is this based on a true story?
yes. Have
Okay.
you seen the thing?
The what?
The documentary? Because it's
No.
based on like a documentary.
Yeah,
and a
so
true story,
2019
you don't know.
documentary. It's based on a
So
true story. Same director
I
as the
knew
documentary.
that, but didn't know how it wound up. So I would say this was like, I mean, Apollo 13 underwater without, bigger ideas or Ron Howard's budget or Tom Hanks. But I definitely was concerned. I didn't know what was going to happen because I didn't
Same.
know the real
had
thing.
not
And
seen
I
the
was like,
documentary.
and I was very concerned for the people involved. At some points, like really thought I was watching a snuff film.
Mm-hmm.
I
Is it-
was like really uncomfortable, like really, really uncomfortable because of the story and the
Mhm.
way it was being filmed. But also it's just fine. But
I fully agree.
Yeah.
That I felt both enormous fear for the characters, but also walked out of the movie and was like, oh, that was all right.
yeah.
This is a common trend now. The most recent example I can think of is the Jimmy Chin, Chai Vasarhelyi movie, The Rescue, coming out in 2018, I want to say. And then 13 Lives, the Ron Howard movie, came out
movie.
4
That's
years
actually
later.
pretty good.
Yeah.
The Ron Howard movie is excellent. Unfortunately, I had seen The Rescue. So there was no drama.
Right.
Like I knew exactly.
But we also knew that what happened in Apollo 13, right?
But the problem is that the actual story of that Thai cave rescue, the details of it are remarkable.
Yeah.
Like what they did to
Oh,
rescue
right.
those kids
Yeah,
is
yeah,
amazing. But if you watch it completely shown in the way that's a great documentary too. In this case, I just hadn't seen Last Breath, the 2019 documentary that Alex Parkinson made. So like you, I didn't know where the story was going. And what actually happens to one of the men who gets trapped
It's
defies
unreal.
explanation.
Yeah.
It's just one of the craziest things that you could ever imagine
and you're,
happening.
like you're watching a movie, so you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, like I'm watching this movie, like I have to be watching it because of one outcome, but
Right.
then the movie does sort of confound that for a while, and so you're like, okay, wait, actually, what am I watching? What is good? So there is like a level of suspense that it maintains,
Absolutely.
that is pretty gripping. I would say it's like top to bottom miscast, with the exception of the captain of the boat.
Which is Woody Harrelson.
No, he's
No, Cliff Curtis. He's awesome.
I love him.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's great.
But the
Woody is kind of weird in it.
he's fine,
Yeah.
but it's like another Mr. Peanut situation, like that. He's mostly in one little submersible. That
Simu Liu.
Real quick, were you getting Jimmy Carter from Mr. Peanut?
sure, yeah,
Okay.
but like
Is that who Mr. Peanut is based on?
No, but he sounded like Mr. Peanut, and wasn't Jimmy Carter?
He was a peanut
yeah,
farmer.
peanut
yeah.
farmer, yeah.
So is he like just do
You think
Jimmy?
it was an homage to the late president?
Kind of wonder. Yeah.
I think that was probably recorded some years ago before
Yeah.
Carter passed.
Okay.
Carter, his policies internationally, you agreed with them? Kind of a Gorge situation.
Okay.
Um,
How would Jimmy Carter have handled the Gorge?
Last Breath, soft recommend?
Soft recommend, yeah.
Okay.
I think they cast people who are willing to dive for rather than people who maybe had the emotional register, but that's okay.
Before we get to the next film,
Yeah.
I just want to address something really quickly.
Okay. Is this about me and you?
Nope. Nobody really knows who Bernthal is playing, which is why I don't know. There's some speculation that it's Menelaus, and there's some speculation that it's Nestor.
I did wonder if it was Menelaus.
And
but-
so it's not my fault. I walked myself into that corner. I couldn't get out. But I want to
just
say,
need you to get your shit together, figure out what the Odyssey R is, stop dive bombing these episodes with random updates, come in with a plan. I'll support that plan.
okay.
There's nothing I want more than for you to be a star. A big shining star. Let's talk about the monkey. This is the second Oz Perkins movie in 8 months. There's actually another movie coming out later this year from Oz Perkins called Keeper. It also comes from Neon's, based on a Stephen King story from the 80s, which I read. Not recently, but when I was a kid. And I remember being very upsetting and scary. And I did not think the monkey was very scary and is not really trying to be. It is much more of a horror comedy.
Yeah.
Emphasis on extravagant, gory kills. Do you know anything about the story of this movie? Do you know what it is?
No, but I did recently learn that Oz Perkins' great grandmother is Elsa Schiaparelli. So I didn't know that. Yeah.
Huh.
So there you go. I learned that from his press tour for this film. I think from
Did you have
director
Oz on
bits,
for the
so-
monkey? Or no?
No, I did not. I was pretty mixed on the monkey.
I was pretty mixed on the monkey too. It has a bunch of things that I'm not a big fan of in horror movies, both or in any filmed medium, which is twins, and also
Crazy times for you right now, though.
dangerous toys. I don't like.
Dangerous toys.
Never been a Chucky guy.
Mm,
Oh, interesting. So there is a monkey, of course.
sure.
A toy monkey.
It's
Yeah.
a toy monkey that plays the drums.
Mhm.
And the
okay.
monkey plays the drums, I think, because Disney copyrighted. What is the other monkey? Is it the organ
Oh,
grinder?
This guy, yeah.
Yeah, the I'm almost positive that's what happened. So in the story,
Yeah.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
But in real life, in this story, they had to change it to the drums. But every time the monkey performs its sort of drum solo,
Yeah.
knocks energy for the record.
Yeah.
Someone in the world is killed.
In a spectacular fashion.
In
A
the
little
kills
part of
in this
me
movie,
dies every time Knox drums. So
the kills are fucking crazy. Some of them are fun.
Sure.
Um,
I think it's a good testament to why kills need context. Because like just pure violence or bloodshed it doesn't do anything. I mean, I can admire it from an aesthetic level, and there's definitely some good filmmaking in this. But if there was like some goofiness to Longlegs, it's that extracted and then blown up for an entire film.
made
This
the
is like
central feeling.
yeah, and I am a guy who one of my favorite movies ever made is Maximum Overdrive, which is a Stephen King directed film about what would happen if trucks and machines took over the world for
kind of the Electric State
period of
prequel.
time.
Yeah. By the
Do
way,
you think
Stephen
Knox
King riddled with cocaine
Yeah.
throughout the production
sure.
of this film.
Yeah.
But so I don't mind like that. I don't mind funny horror, but this was like kind of like just gory for gore's sake. And I never really got that into like the story itself of these two twin brothers who were kind of beefing from childhood and then realize they have to rely on each other. And
Here's the thing. This movie, just like Longlegs, the more I listened to Oz talk about it or read about the inspirations for it, the more I got it. That's not necessarily a good thing for the movie watching experience. But like Longlegs, this is very clearly a movie about processing your parents' death and the suddenness of death and how that feels to a person. This movie has two very intense death sequences for parents. He also mentioned Death Becomes Her as a big inspiration,
Okay.
which is
Now I'm listening.
now, I would not say it has quite the feminist energy of Death
Okay.
Becomes Her, but the tone and that approach, that horror
extreme
comedy
physical
style,
comedy. Yeah.
made it make more sense to me. I really like Oz personally. I love talking with him on the show. I liked Longlegs. I'm very curious to see about Keeper. This is the third of the three movies, and I've heard it's very good.
Is Keeper it's not also Stephen King.
Not also Stephen King.
Okay.
No. Amanda, I would not recommend The Monkey to you.
Okay.
Did you see Eephus?
I did.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's talk about Eephus quickly.
Okay.
Directed by Carson Lund. It was at the New York Film Festival last year. I think it was at Cannes in 2024, actually.
I think that's correct.
at the Fortnight. It's about, I know Bob has seen it as well. It's about basically one last baseball game at another 1990s story, a small Massachusetts town that has an amateur baseball crew before the stadium's going to be demolished to build a new school. It has the structure of a game, but no real story. Is an extremely durational game. Takes a very long time to complete, including Into the Darkness. really much more of a character study. It is made by some of the same people who made Christmas Eve at Miller's Point. This is very similar in terms of tone, in terms of like the episodic nature of it. I thought it was very charming. What'd you think?
Same. I mean, it is just guys sitting around playing baseball and talking in the dugout. And it's mostly actors that, you haven't seen before of a certain age. It's not like a movie star movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a very charming slice of life of these people who do something together every once in a while and are having to say goodbye to it. Like, it is a little melancholy.
It is.
But, in the way that baseball is. I don't know. I like baseball, so I was charmed by it. Bob?
Oh, I loved it. I thought that it's one of my favorite movies of the year so far. I did get a chance to see it last year at New York Film Festival. I thought that one of my favorite parts of it was that at times, in a good way, it felt like sort of a competition between the writers to see how many different baseball aphorisms they could just rip off in a row without the movie totally stalling out. And it doesn't. And then the other piece of it that I thought was amazing and captures the essence of baseball is it's so tactile. They have all these cool interstitials between the different episodic, I guess episodes of the movie.
The innings of the
where,
movie.
They literally break it down into innings and they show scorecards. It feels kind of timeless, although I think it's intended to be set in the 90s, but they have these old Sports Authority water bottles. The jerseys are all varying different ages. It just captures that kind of like liminal and endless quality that baseball can have. It's very, very dreamlike in its execution. So if you love baseball or if you love a kind of like dream-like descent into weirdness, I do think you will vibe with Eephus.
What's going on with this scene of the Eephus, the Christmas at Miller's Point, like
Another generation of independent filmmakers.
I love it.
I think it's kind of like
I really liked Christmas.
Safdie's New York indie guys.
Okay.
Carson Lund, I think, is just a part of that whole crew of people. Some of them are friends, some of them are not. But we kind of whinge about the perilous state of independent movies. But like, if you want to support independent movies, go check out Eephus. It's very good.
I will support it.
A few more for you guys before we wrap up and get to MAG. I saw Becoming Led Zeppelin in IMAX.
Mm-hmm.
You saw it before it was the first part.
You invited.
I invited you guys and you blew me off.
You mostly invited Chris. I was like a last minute and I couldn't make it, but it's fine. Then we got to have barbecue and then we saw
Captain America Brave New
a
World.
terrible Marvel film.
Yeah. Becoming Led Zeppelin is kind of the emotional inverse of Brave New World. It's an interesting documentary. It only features interviews with the 3 surviving members of Led Zeppelin and significant archival from John Bonham. I think most of it never heard before. But is basically just a performance movie. It features like several long performances of Led Zeppelin.
Good.
And only goes through the first 2 records.
Bad.
Yeah.
But not terrible. I love Led Zeppelin's perfect art, so it doesn't matter to me, but I'm a physical graffiti guy and 4.
I was wondering if this was an attempt to make a second
part
film,
2,
a third
3,
film, maybe even. Like I could see them trying
The
to stretch
Zeppelin
it out.
verse?
I would be all about that extended universe. Bernard McMahon directed it. It's just a major sensory experience. There's a couple of performances. There's one in Sweden. There's one in England, their first big English performance when they return home from America, where they're just playing Dazed and Confused at length, like 8-minute version. Incredibly overwhelming and powerful in IMAX. At home, I don't know if it'll have quite the same effect, but still very cool to see them. Your young son, for example.
I'm really excited.
I really into it.
did Google showtimes and then I was like, I can't.
When your
like,
kid
he's
discovers
3.
John Bonham, it's over.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have showed him what is the Zeppelin like weird film with the elves?
Is that
The song remains the same.
Yeah, Zach showed him that, and
Yeah.
I showed him the Lincoln Center tribute where Hart plays, and
Oh yeah,
and then John Bonham's son is
right,
drumming.
Jason.
Yeah.
So he's like kind of aware, but I think this is the next step. I just think we have to do it at home.
Yeah, it was really fucking loud.
Yeah,
And frankly, I was
too
the
loud.
youngest
Yeah.
person in the theater by far.
Yeah.
Like so many gray hairs in there rocking out to Zeppelin, but they were having a ball. It's a very pro forma doc, but it's a great music experience. And in a way, I would rather this sort of thing just replace the Bohemian Rhapsodies of the world. Like, don't pretend to tell me how the story
Yeah, just
was.
do Queen at Live Aid and
Exactly.
remaster it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just show us that performance. I did enjoy what Jimmy Page had to say, and I learned a lot specifically about where he started as a session musician and working on Bond themes, and how he kind of made his way while also joining the Yardbirds and becoming a great musician. Robert Plant was like, then you just throw it against the wall, mate, and then it's over here, and then you just grab it over there, and then you just put it... Like, he had nothing of substance to say the entire film, but I still enjoyed looking at him. He now looks like a J.R.R. Tolkien character. But solid movie. Couple of disappointing movies. Mm-hmm. It breaks my heart to say that the new Errol Morris documentary is not good.
I checked it out, and I thought it was pretty flat.
Pretty flat.
Yeah.
It's called Chaos: The Manson Murders. It's based on this remarkable Tom O'Neill book about the synchronicity between the Manson murders and several secretive government operations.
You a Manson guy?
In a couple different ways, no.
But in of the '60s conspiracies of the '60s, sort of like.
No, I'm like not there. I mean, I've listened to the You Must Remember This season.
Yeah.
Like I like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as much as the next person. You know, I know the basics, but no, I haven't gone deep.
This O'Neill book is really fascinating. It's a little bit harebrained at times. We're trying to draw all of these connections to things that may or may not ultimately be connected. He has a lot of source material, and he's like
Charlie Day at the corkboard vibes.
Yeah, very much. But it's written with such momentum that it's hard to not get caught up in it. And I usually feel like Errol Morris is the absolute best at being like, you've got a lot of crazy theories. Let me bring them all together. This just felt like over-reliance on a certain kind of like archival, like zoom-in photograph style. Weirdly, not enough Tom O'Neill. I kind of wanted him to just be like the full-blown narrator of the thing. And I maybe just know a little bit too much about this.
There you go. That sometimes happens with documentaries.
Yeah.
That's how I kind of felt a little bit. If you've watched the Ken Burns Vietnam documentary, there was another Vietnam documentary on Apple. And I was kind of like, this is just like, I feel like I'm swimming with water wings on here.
Yeah, agreed. I mentioned Love Hurts. Terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible. It made Novocaine feel a lot better. No offense to
Kiwi and who's the other person in it?
Ariana DeBose.
Oh, yeah.
So they just
Two
put
Oscar
all the
winners.
Oscar winners
Marshawn
together
Lynch is in it, Super Bowl champion.
Also looks like it was shot on like the Good Place set, right?
Yes. Well, it's in fairness to it, it's about real estate agents selling like prefab community houses.
Okay.
So that kind of like fakeness that comes with it, I guess, is justified. It feels like that's just like a screenwriting hack to get a movie made cheaper, though. Mm-hmm. Directed by a former stuntman. I usually love movies like that. This one didn't hit. It's a big no. It's also 83 minutes.
Well,
which I thought was fascinating. Doesn't make it good.
Yeah.
But it exists. Another kind of disappointment, The Actor, which is a movie that just opened in theaters starring Andre Holland as an actor in New York who is struck in the head after sleeping with some man's wife and then wakes up and finds himself in a small town in Ohio and he can't figure out what happened.
Great premise.
Thrilling setup.
Yeah.
It's based on a Donald Westlake story called Memory from 1960.
And was there originally going to star Gosling?
I believe Gosling, and somebody else was, I don't know if Duke Johnson was always attached. Duke Johnson, who worked on Anomalisa with Charlie Kaufman. And yeah, I think there's like a filmmaking style choice that's meant to make it feel like you're in a dream the whole time that I found incredibly distancing and hard to connect with. So I had high hopes for this movie and maybe even thought about like drafting it in an auction once upon a time because it's been tabbed for a long time and it kind of just came and went. That's pretty much it.
The great work continues. We'll keep getting into the batter's box and Hollywood will keep pitching us.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. It's what, 2 weeks to baseball season?
Yeah, it's almost here.
So excited.
Not a great spring for the Phils.
Not a great spring?
It's more about the summer, but and honestly, it's more about October.
What happened last October?
Yeah. I forgot how to hit. That's what happened.
Who are you rooting for this year?
I think we got to do Phillies again.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was worried you were going to say Dodgers. I was worried you were going to.
No, I mean, I want to go. I'm going to take Knox to Dodger Stadium.
I hope I can be a part of that.
I've identified some possible times. We got to do the 4:30 p.m. The sweet spot, the post nap, pre bedtime.
How close to the field do you want to be?
I don't know.
If money was no object.
Well, I think he would probably be a little scared of the foul, and I still get scared of the foul ball. So
and then you have the net.
He's there.
If you get close, you have the net.
Did Bill say recently that he thinks the nets are bad for baseball?
He did say that.
He sure did.
All right.
Yeah, he did.
Did that resonate in your community, Bob?
It sure did. Yeah. Okay. I was like, that's a very specific thing to be the one thing that was the domino that crushed Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
But Maybe he has some data that I don't know about.
Yeah. I think there's a few other reasons. I'm very excited for the baseball season. Clay Holmes season, as I'm calling it. Future Cy Young winner, Clay Holmes.
Okay.
Have you heard of him?
I assume he's a Met.
He's a Met. He's a converted reliever that they're attempting to stretch out to become a starter.
Okay.
He had a promising spring.
They're not
Griffin
really
Canning, he had a promising spring.
If they only throw
I believe
for
he
4.5
struck out
innings.
9 batters today. Is that right, Bob?
7, but yeah.
7 shit.
Okay.
Injury bug has struck the Mets, but I think we're going to power through.
March Madness, St. John's. Who are you
Okay.
cheering for?
I only learned that it was starting this morning. So, like, what are the number
There are a
one
lot of
seeds?
SEC teams. I think the Vols are
I
probably.
believe
in
there are 12 SEC teams.
See, I like on the one hand,
14. My goodness.
when I was an active member of the SEC fan community,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't really do basketball.
What did
So,
you
like,
do? Run message boards? What did you do?
Exactly. So I had a little cheerleading suit that I wore.
Did
But-
you?
Yeah.
Did you have a cheerleading phase?
No, I just had this little. I was like 4.
But did you wear a suit, like a cheerleading outfit?
Yeah, it was like a Tennessee Vols. I don't know. Someone got it for me. What do you want? I was 4. Okay.
Yeah. When the electric state happens, we're going to get that online.
Yeah. But basketball wasn't really a going concern in the same way the SEC hadn't
I
really
see.
spread its tentacles. And now I know it's just like taking over collegiate sports. And I think there are probably some things we should investigate there.
Like
but,
what?
But so that's
Like
fine.
human rights violations?
Yeah. But
Okay.
I don't really care about the SEC basketball.
Who are you rooting for?
Typically, I root for Kentucky because I would always cheer for John Calipari's team. He now coaches at Arkansas. They're both in the tournament. So I think I might split it, not cheer for either and go for Oregon because I love their campus.
Mm-hmm. The Ducks?
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. What seed is Oregon this year?
I think they're like a 5 seed.
Okay, it's very exciting. I will be rooting very hard for St. John's. I fear tremendous heartbreak is imminent,
Okay.
but nevertheless, I'm very excited for them. I'm also very excited to now share my conversation with Mark Anthony Green. Let's go there right now. Mark Anthony Green is here, the writer and director of his debut feature film Opus. He also happens to be one of my oldest friends.
Yeah.
Somebody I've known for 15 years. What was the first meeting? Do you remember? What happened?
I don't remember the first meeting. I remember the day that I realized you were a G,
Okay.
which is I pissed off Jay-Z.
Mm-hmm.
And long story short, Sean ran GQ's website. And I had written this story that this human being, whose name I won't say, Jamil Spencer, who ran Rockaware for Jay-Z. And long story short, he came to me and was like, I want you to write this story about Jay-Z buying BBC from Pharrell. And I was like, great. We did all the fact checking, went back and forth with him, published the story, and all hell broke loose. And Jay-Z turned, this is all according to people, but Jay-Z turned his plane around mid-flight, as you can do with a private jet.
Uh-huh.
And Will Welsh was getting calls from Jana Fleischman, who was Jay-Z's publicist, I think still is. And I had only been at GQ for like a month, and I thought I lost my job. And Jay-Z's 5th tweet, he had 4 tweets under his belt.
Total. Yeah.
And they were all like, I have an album on the way. And that was it for the whole rollout for Magna Carta Holy Grail, like whatever the albums were. And his 5th tweet was, I am partnering with Pharrell, not buying his company, like GQ erroneously printed. And I saw my life and job flash before my eyes. But then Sean was like, send me every email. Saw all my work, saw that everything had been checked and da-da-da. And then you went to war and it was tight. So you've been my boy ever since.
I appreciate that. I don't even really remember what I did, but I did know some people in Jay-Z's orbit at that time.
Yes,
So if I helped,
you did that.
I did the best
you
that
were
I
like,
could.
hey,
Stand
if this
down
is
on
on somebody, it's not on this
my young reporter.
Yeah, this 22-year-old who did his job.
I've been thinking a lot about that time when we worked together, which was ultimately only like less than 18 months, but we bonded pretty quickly, and we definitely talked about movies in that time, but I don't think we ever had the conversation like, yo, I want to be a filmmaker one day.
Really?
I don't think so. I was trying to think back to it because I was obviously,
Yeah.
knowing me back then, I was even really movie crazy,
Yeah.
even though that wasn't my beat at the time.
Yeah.
So go to the beginning. Like, when did you know you wanted to do it? What were the signal moments in your youth where you were watching movies and felt transported?
Man, I can remember 2 like young experiences. One was watching Batman, where Michelle Pfeiffer straddles Batman in a theater, and I had my first crush. I was like,
I think that was true of a lot of people back then.
And I was born in '88, so I was like very young, but I was like, man, movies, and then when I watched The Fifth Element in a theater, which I stand by. Also, I'm a diehard listener. The year The Fifth Element came out, it went undrafted in a draft.
The 97?
97, sure.
Okay.
Whatever it is, it was egregious. And the fact that none of y'all drafted it. And so I've shown up. I might be the only director to show up at this show, but you're
saying you want to redraft 1997.
Yeah. Yes. I just couldn't believe it went undrafted. What an incredible film.
Yep.
You have John Paul Gaultier, some of the best costume design ever. You have Chris Tucker, like throwing 2,000 miles an hour in a unitard, flirting with stewardesses that they casted as all mixed women with freckles and bobs. Yeah. I don't know what more you could want from a film. I'm sorry.
The very small gap in age that we have, though, I think explains a lot. Because I was 15 when this came out, and you were 9.
Yeah, you had seen like Die Hard and all the movies that I understand. For me, that was the first time I ever seen Bruce Willis.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
that's a weird way to get introduced to him.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
It's a cool movie. I have nothing against that movie.
But that's kind of the amazing thing about depending on how old you are, your relationship with a thing, because everything like Die Hard coming after that, and everybody being like, this movie, like I've read some reviews from that time of that film because I'm like, this was a masterpiece.
Oh, people were tough on it.
Yeah, but if I watched all the movies before it, I probably wouldn't have blown my hair back. But that movie made me want to make movies. Like I left the theater as a kid being like, I want to make movies. I didn't know you could do that.
So you spent a lot of time in your career before making movies in the world of style. Like you meant you're already name dropped Jean Paul Gaultier on this show. Which
I didn't name drop him. I said his name. There's a difference.
You used
name
his
drop
name.
Would be like, yo, I hang out with Sean Fennessey. That's a name drop. Saying I'm a fan of somebody's, I've never met that man. That's not a name drop. I'm
surprised that's a person you haven't met though. Just given,
I have met John Paul. Okay, I'm saying I don't know him. That's not my man. I can't call him like I can call you. But I have met John.
That is a wonderful thing about knowing you is that I'm not surprised to learn that you know Jean Paul Gaultier. Anyway,
I worked at a fashion magazine forever. I've been to a fashion week or two.
When you were thinking about trying to become a creative person, like you ended up at a magazine and you spent a long time at GQ.
Yeah.
All that time, obviously, it appears that you were plotting, scheming, creating in your mind behind the scenes, trying to get things going. But did you see like the world of journalism and magazines as like a portal to that? Was it how did you?
No, you know what it was for me? There are like 4 phases before I got here. There's Morehouse. I graduated from Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. And Morehouse taught me the type of man I wanted to be.
Which was what?
The man you see today, somebody that is honest, that has integrity, that does things with style, that's not afraid, that has ambition, that cares deeply about his friends and family, overly sensitive, will raise his voice, will stand on a table, way more bark than bite, but I don't really bark that much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I always smell good.
That I can attest to.
Yeah, like, just like, I think.
They teach that at Morehouse? They did not teach that at Ithaca College, I gotta tell you.
Yeah, it's a different experience, though. I will say, like, I was not in like a classroom learning. I was learning everything outside the classroom. And then I worked at this clothing store, Sid Mashburn, and that's the first time I ever saw somebody do something at 100%, and it rocked my world.
Should just briefly explain to the listeners who Sid is and what that experience
He's a
is.
designer in Atlanta, and I worked for him for free so that he would introduce me to somebody at GQ. So he like created an internship program. And but this was his dream. He worked at Ralph Lauren and LL Bean and all these places, and it was the first time I ever saw somebody have a dream and chase it with 100% like a madman. And that opened up something for me. And then GQ was, to me, it taught me about both storytelling and taste, and what my taste really was, and like the mix of things. Like if you look at Opus as a film, there's so much humor in the movie, but I think that like to me, it feels very balanced, and I don't know that I'm capable or want to make something that doesn't have that type of humor in it, or a seriousness, or like take on something important. And there's like a mix. Like I think GQ taught me the value of the mix, in addition to a lot of other things. And so I carry that with me, but I don't know. I just, your question of, did I always see that this is what I wanted to do? Yeah, since I was a kid. But I don't think that like being a magazine writer, editor into filmmaker, that I didn't look at that as like a path.
It's interesting because there is a pretty long tradition of that path.
Really?
Yeah. You have critics like Peter Bogdanovich or Paul Schrader, who are basically just working critics, writing scripts, getting in the good graces of filmmakers, getting opportunities. And then you also have like folks like Robert Benton, who wrote Bonnie and Clyde, who was like an editor at Esquire.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And
he wrote the original Bonnie and Clyde.
The original, the 60s version.
This is that Sean Fennessey shit.
Yeah,
this is what we're here for.
I tend to
No, stop, Sean. This is, ladies and gentlemen of the big picture, this is why the fuck we show up. We show up for him to do this nerdy shit right here. This is it. It's happening.
Just making connections
in real time. It's beautiful.
I'm putting you in a continuum.
I had no idea. I didn't know that.
Of magazine writer, editor voices. And I totally relate to what you're describing. That the mix, the balance in building the book, as we call it, is an aspect, has a relationship to making a movie. You got department heads in magazines, you got department heads on your movie. You got tone in your movie, you got tone in your issue, or tone in the story that you're working on. You got photography. You got all these different component parts. And I thought about this a lot when I was watching your movie, which I'm just so proud of you for accomplishing, but I'm especially like touched by it because the movie is about a print magazine journalist.
Yeah.
And it's a very wry and sly about that and what it's like to be one of those people, which is kind of a dying breed as a gig.
Yeah.
So tell me how like it informed the actual story itself, the actual like writing of Opus, the character that Io plays.
I look at it like this. Well, first of all, now that Opus is in the world, it's not my place to tell people how to Opus. So like, if this film to you is about, not you saying this, but if it's about journalism, then that's not, my read on it and my intention on it. Opus is no more about journalism than it is, White Man Can't Jump is about basketball.
Mm-hmm.
The basketball in White Man Can't Jump, as far as like street basketball in LA, the deferred dream of it all, they knocked it out the park. It's accurate. And I think the journalism, that power dynamic, what it's like, what it looks like, what it smells like, the texture of it is very accurate because I lived that life for 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so that to me is like, outside of making that aspect of it accurate, the thing that it tackles, I don't have a front row seat to. I think the thing that it tackles, we all are experiencing, which is tribalism and what I consider to be a global pandemic of, tribalism, this thing that has gone too far, in my opinion. So yeah, so I don't know. I just wanted it to feel accurate.
I felt like when I was working at GQ and even in some respects at Grantland and The Ringer,
Yeah.
there's a part of the work that is trying to identify what is going to be next and cool. And then there's a part of the work that is trying to figure out like what is you, what is us.
Yeah.
Once you've determined what is cool.
Yeah.
And so I feel like what I really like about Io's character in the movie is like she seems to have like a real skepticism about the whole enterprise.
Yeah.
And I tend to find that like really good magazine editors, really good magazine writers are like really enthusiastic, but also like, this is kind of bullshit.
Yeah. Especially when you're the youngest in the room.
Mm.
And when you and I worked together, I was the youngest in the room. And then I stayed to where I was like, ancient. But I was the youngest in the room. So there were things that just excited people in that room that meant nothing to me. Like a story I've told is I didn't know who Bruce Springsteen was when I first got to GQ. And we were in an ideas meeting and it's like the first cover meeting and everyone's freaking out about Bruce Springsteen. I'd never heard the man's name. Now, I'm 37-year-old. I just turned 37. 37-year-old black kid from the Midwest who went to HBCU. I didn't grow up in a house where we were listening to Bruce Springsteen. Yeah. I didn't date girls that listen to Bruce Springsteen. He just never came across my desk, So yeah, so like, everybody being like, this is the cover that's going to change the world. And then there's one person in the room that's like, I've never heard of him. I didn't say that. I didn't have that would
take balls. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't have the juice to let them know I knew nothing about nothing. But yeah, I think that there's real power in being the youngest person in the room. I think there's real power in being the person that is not intoxicated by whoever. And especially as a journalist, I think that you are able to genuinely maintain a level of objectivity. Like I listened to Bruce Springsteen that day and I was like, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
You
didn't turn yourself over to him though.
This isn't Andre 3000. You know what I'm saying? This isn't, I wouldn't even say this is like fabulous. Like, but I know this reckless. Is tough. I know. But reckless, Sean, I came here to pod, baby. I told you I'd give you my best. And I'm just saying, like, I listened to him and
Are you auditioning now for a music podcast here?
No, trust me. No. I will be I'll be back on set. But look, I get it, and it's a thing. I told this story to John and to the crew because I felt like that was the challenge with Moretti. I went from that ideas meeting to the next meeting and I asked Will Welsh, I was like, who is Bruce Springsteen? And he looked at me and was like, Jesus Christ, who's this human I hired? But he had like 30 seconds to contextualize this person for me. And I felt like that's what we had. We had a very short amount of time to show you how big this pop star was, for you to believe that he exists amongst, Prince and Alice Cooper and David Bowie, and he's Elton John, and he's in this zone. You just haven't heard of him.
Right.
But I need you to get it, and I got it. He may not be fabulous to you, but I get it. And so that was it. Cause you get very little time for the exposition part of it. So yeah.
I am very curious to hear the story of John Malkovich being a part of this movie. I'll give you an honest take with no disrespect to Malkovich, who is a legend.
Yeah.
Hit or miss in the last 20 years for me.
Oh, 100%.
Iconic actor.
Yeah.
Obviously, his resume speaks for itself.
Yeah.
But you never know what you're going to get these days.
Yeah.
And I think he's on his like A+ game in your movie.
Thank you.
And so maybe you can tell me how you got him to buy into the same spiel that Will helped you explain in 30 seconds on who Bruce Springsteen is.
I think that this is one of John's best performances in his career, and I'm honored by that. I'm a huge fan of his. But yeah, I think he would say that's fair. There was a funny moment when, there was an interview that I'm sure you saw. It went viral. And it's Matt Damon, and he's talking about John Malkovich showing up to the set of Rounders. And we shot Opus in 19 days. And so I'm now at the point of planning where all of your financial issues, they're put on your plate as a director. And they're like, cool, you need to go figure this out. So I'm looking at the schedule that it's looking like we're going to land on and the lack of money that we have. And this interview with Matt Damon goes viral where he talks about John just showing up and deciding that the character was Russian. And so they had to go back and change. But Teddy KGB was just like Theodore from wherever.
Yeah, Bensonhurst.
Yeah. And he showed up and my money and does the whole thing. And I'm like, he can't do that with 19 days. Like we won't finish this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I love to plan and I love to rehearse. And I think that it gives everyone, all artists involved in a film, the freedom to try something when everything else is where it's supposed to be. So I call his agent, I puff my chest out and I'm like, yo, I need to see John right now. I'm going to come see him this week. Tell me where he is, but I'm on my way to see him. If he's shooting, he's got to make time. We got to go to dinner, but I got to see him this week, right? Hang up. So his agent, who I love, shout out to Brent, he calls me back and he's like, so John's in Riga, Latvia. And he says, sure, you can come, but, let me know if you want this to be an email. And so chest already puffed, can't unpuff it. So I'm like, no, tell him I'm on my way to Riga. Hang up. I Google Riga, Latvia. Had never heard of it. Not quite fabulous either. You know what I'm saying?
No.
And at this time, I don't know, but the war with Russia and the Ukraine is it's 2 months in,
Mm-hmm.
and it is extremely dangerous. A little geographical fact for the folks at home: Russia used to own the Ukraine. Used to own Latvia, and Riga is kind of a sensitive spot between the two. So when I go to London first because there was an actor for a different role that I wanted to see in a play. And my flight from London to Riga, I was the only person on the plane. I had never experienced that before. Like I got on, they closed the door behind me. It's like, Jesus Christ.
This was just a commercial flight.
This was just a commercial flight.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no one's going to the war zone. And so I got off the plane. There was a building that looked like it was from the last war and they hadn't cleaned up yet. Like it was like blown up and they just left it. My hotel was $115 a night. It's the nicest hotel in Riga. And so cool, let's do it. And everyone's staring at me. So I go to meet John for dinner. And I see him in the restaurant and he's wearing an eye patch. I don't know if y'all have seen John in my film, but he's does not have an eye patch. Spoiler alert. And so I sit down with him and he's like, hey. I'm like, hey, what's up with the eye patch? And he's like, oh, I had emergency surgery on my left eye. And they say it's 50-50 if I get my vision back. And my right eye only has 20% of the vision. Never been a good math student, but I'm like, okay, so you have 10% of your total vision right now. And he's in Latvia directing a play and doesn't speak Latvian. I swear I'm not making any of this up.
Yeah.
And in fact, I'll give y'all a photo to put up. And so then he looks at me and he says, why the fuck are you here? And, he says it and it's Malkovichian, you know what I'm saying? And he's whatever, however you do it.
Malkovichian?
Yeah, Malkovichian. And so I'm like, I need you to see how serious I am and to know you're not going to fuck up my movie.
Mm-hmm.
And silent. And he starts dying laughing. He orders a bottle of wine. He didn't know I didn't drink at the time. So, he didn't share the bottle. And we stayed up that whole night. The restaurant was really kind and let us just sit there And, we basically talked until the sun came up about everything. He's from the Midwest, loves basketball. I grew up playing ball. But also talked about the character, why this movie was important to me, what I expected from him, that I expected him to bring it every day. And then I went to rehearsal with him the next day to see him direct these people in a language he doesn't speak with 10% of his vision. And dare I say, he was making choices and demanding things. And I think the play was getting better.
Mm-hmm.
So, John Malkovich. And we had dinner that night. And ever since that moment, he brought an intensity to set, to rehearsal. And he was the best creative partner that I could have had on this.
I think Moretti could have been very silly, maybe even stupid, if not executed correctly.
Yes,
maybe.
It's a really tough, and one of the mantras that I had on set with everyone is that this film is not camp.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you watch this film and you're like, this was campy to me, that's totally fine. I'm not going to tell you how to Opus, but I think if you start out that way, you could never get to someplace believable.
Mm-hmm.
If you set out that like we have no intention on this feeling real or possible, and again, I watch him in this film. He is so fucking good and fearless and weird and interesting, and he's falling on the floor. And the man's 70. He was 70 when we shot. He's 71 now.
It's a very physical performance from him. Very physical.
And he would stretch constant. Like he had to physically get it up for this to get there. But after that day in Riga, that wonderful night in Riga, shout out to Latvia. We opened in Latvia today, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, shout out to all the Latvians.
Is there a strong movie theater going culture there?
I have no idea.
Do we have Latvian listeners out there?
Yeah, shout out to all the big pick, the Latvian.
Yeah, they're probably all like CR guys, just a lot of CR heads.
I think especially on that block.
Yeah.
That's where
his energy.
That's where they really, yeah. But yeah, man, it was working with him again. One of the biggest honors of my 37 years so far.
So you and I went out a few years ago. Might have been pre-pandemic. I can't remember. And you were wearing an Ichi the Killer t-shirt.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And I knew you liked movies and you'd been listening to the show. You sent me nice notes about the show. We talked movies. I'm sure 15 years ago we were talking about movies. But I was like, I didn't know you were about that.
Yeah.
And I clocked that and put it in the back of my head. And then I saw the movie and I was like, oh.
Yeah. Takashi Miike is like
obviously a huge thing for you.
Yeah.
And I think if you like bring that, maybe if you just carry that knowledge to going to see the movie, I actually think it opens the movie up in some ways.
Yes, especially tonally.
Yeah.
And the pacing.
That there's kind of like a sick sense of humor.
Yes.
And also something very upsetting at its core. Which, as you know, knowing me is also a thing that I really like and I appreciate.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about what were did you have hallmarks? Did you have movies that you looked at or tried not to look at so you didn't rip them off or things that...
The Audition was a big one for me.
Yeah.
And that's the only true homage in the film.
Yeah, there's a very clear one.
There's a clear one. Yeah. And but I love him. But the pacing in general, if I can say, I set out to make a challenging film. One of the reasons I'm so excited to be here, in addition to loving you and listening to the pod every episode, is I think that the pacing, the format, spoiler alert, no one dies in the first 5 minutes of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so deeply proud of that. I'm so deeply proud of the fact that we made a horror film that lets you live with your main character. I'm so deeply proud of the fact that that main character is a Black woman and that you see her at home. You see her at work. You see her on a date with young Mazzino in one of the cutest scenes of the year. You get to live with her. And another thing that Japanese horror films do that I'm deeply inspired by, when they do the gory thing, they go all the way. And that's just kind of, I think it's a sensibility that I share with them.
Mm-hmm.
if you're gonna do it, go all the way. And that felt like to get this message across, like a really both challenging, because it's not your traditional paced horror film, but like challenging in a rewarding way. And I was deeply inspired by that. So, Train to Busan, there's just a lot of those films I think I constantly reference, watch with my DP, Tommy Maddox Upshaw. And then there were films that like, I don't want to give too much away, but in the folk horror genre, you have the classics, the Wicker Mans. I put Midsommar up there as a classic, a modern classic. And there were things that they did that we just didn't do because they did it.
Mm-hmm.
They go off into a remote place and they take their cell phones. And outside of that, to me, it's like, cool. Like those devices that are fun and you got to get rid of the phones. So, yeah, I don't want to give away too much in that regard, but I think knowing what not to do, we did that a lot with the character, like if Prince was known for something, or like I took wigs off the table because of David Bowie.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want people to think, oh, he's David Bowie.
I was trying to I wrote down Prince, Bowie, Sly Stone because of the kind of reclusive nature, but
Alice Cooper was a big, and I liked his theatrics a lot.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but also Nile Rodgers worked with Bowie. He made Let's Dance with Bowie and a bunch of other great records. And
yeah, so I mean, Nile Rodgers and The Dream write the original songs.
Yeah,
I've said it
John
on this
sings
show
them.
a couple times.
Yeah.
That original songs for a fake pop star in a movie is like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, it is.
Almost never goes well.
Yeah.
Their songs are extremely credible.
Yeah,
in
thank
this movie.
you. They
Obviously,
jam.
you've got great writers and producers doing it, but how did you get them to do that?
I asked them really nicely.
Okay.
Now, here's the thing. Everybody that made this movie is underpaid. But nobody's more underpaid compared to what they get paid to do the thing that they do than Nile and Dream. There was a point in time where they were working with Beyonce and working with me. And then back to Beyonce and then back to me, right? True story. And they had just won, Cuff It had come out, the hit that they wrote for her.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were working on Cowboy Carter at the time. And I don't think we paid Dream and Nile enough to cover their like travel. Like the way that they normally travel. That's how little we had in the budget to pay them. So
you knew them?
I had met Dream a few times.
Yeah. I profiled him in Vibe magazine in 2007.
Real,
Just
that's
putting
that Sean
that-
S.
putting that-
Fennessey. Let's go, baby.
I love Dream.
Yeah. And no, but like that's the thing that I think is a misconception about a lot of, you don't get to be that successful and that good if you're not still an artist at heart. So they read the script. Then they sat down with me. And I'm like, this is the thing I really want to do. And I believe in this. And I think John can pull this off. And I think that y'all are the people to do it. And then to their credit, not only are you trying to do a very difficult thing, like you said, and you're doing it you're basically working for free.
Mm-hmm.
But then you got to let me be demanding and choosy because it has to hit a certain standard. And not only does it have to hit a standard, but it has to fit in this movie. It can't just be a one-off. Like, it can't be its own thing. It can't just be a good record. It has to be a good record that services the story.
Right.
And so they allowed me to be that, to direct them, to work with them, to collaborate with them. And the songs are fucking incredible.
I think that you have to be very self-possessed to be a filmmaker. I've interviewed a lot of filmmakers over the years, and I've known you since you were very young.
Yes.
And so I don't really know how you learned how to like fly to Latvia and tell John Malkovich, like, I need you to fucking focus, or told Nile Rodgers, like, this song needs to work better for my movie. That is something that people struggle with, artists. And when they do it, sometimes it comes across as like insecure and overbearing. So like, how do you figure out how to do this? This is your first movie. You made short. You've been working towards this for a very long period of time. But I think actually doing that thing that you're describing, sticking to your guns, being a guy in his mid-30s talking to people in their 70s who are legends and telling them, I need this to be what I want it to be. How did you do that?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know that I can I can't step out and look at myself.
Well, this is what being interviewed is all about.
I know, but I could talk to you about them. I don't know that I don't know. I really don't know. I think I just believe in this movie. This is my favorite thing. It just is. I'm so deeply proud of this film. I think it's so fun, so weird. It says something. It's just so not about me. So I can't wait to get on that plane. Talk to whoever about it, you know?
When you were on set for the first time or for any time really during the set, what was the number one thing that you were like, shit, I didn't know it was like this?
I didn't know it was like this.
What is the sort of, I don't know who Bruce Springsteen is of film directing for you?
You know, I didn't know that it was so controllable. Like if you want your set to run like a Parisian atelier, like sorry, this is some fashion shit, but like you go to like an atelier where they're making very expensive clothes, it's silent. Like in Phantom Thread, right? It's like you can hear a pin drop. There's one voice at a time. And if you want your set to run like that, it can run like that. If you want people to be miserable, then it can also run like that. You want it to feel like there's always like a boot on everybody's neck and it's chaotic, whatever. It can feel like that. And I was surprised by how the tone, the vibe was really a reflection of, you know, me, my DP, my production designer, Robert Pazoka, who's incredible. Like the department head, like if we showed up and we had a great attitude, then everybody had a good time, and I believe the work was better. And that also came from the actors, you know, Io, John, Juliette Lewis, Murray Bartlett, Tony Hale. You know, none of these people brought an ego into this. And, you know, Stephanie Suganami, who this is really her first film, but like, you know, Stephanie, she's got more followers, quote unquote, than anybody in this movie. She could have come with a certain type of ego. And with all the prosthetics, she couldn't see for 2 days and never complained. You know, I had to go and check and I think that we all kind of agreed, one, we don't have time or money to have an ego, but it felt so good making this movie. And I think I thought I was going to feel tortured during that part of the process.
I've seen the film compared to this like wave of Eat the Rich movies, for lack of a better word, like Blink Twice or The Menu popped up a bit.
Yeah.
And I see the movie a little differently than that.
Yeah.
But I don't want you to have to feel like you have to give it away. But when I saw it, I was like, I think I wrote I was very impressed and I felt a little indicted.
Yeah.
And I think that's because the movie has a strong point of view on not just that tribalism that you're talking about, but on, for lack of a better word, the media apparatus that attaches itself to fame and power and kind of like very as gently as it can siphons energy off of it to create their own little version of success.
Yeah.
This is a very small but complex and powerful idea that I relate to and understand.
Yes.
And I try to have some critical distance from myself, having worked in magazines, interviewing filmmakers. I do think it's a little bit of like a pipe bomb to put in front of the people who do this for a living.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how conscious you were of that choice. And even if I'm reading the movie correctly or if that's an incidental turn.
You got to opus how you opus. And I'm just grateful that there has been such a strong reaction. I set out to make a challenging film. One thing I did not set out to do, nor does Mark Anthony the Human believe, is that journalists are bad. that critics are bad, that media is backwards or anything like that. So that's not how I read it. That's damn sure not how it was written or the intention. And I feel like, with you on here, I want to be honest about like it bummed me out for like a week that it got mixed reviews.
Yeah.
And that some people, not every critic, but some felt like they were being attacked or challenged, yes, but like they felt like they were being attacked by me. And that bummed me out. But
it's ironic, having been a journalist.
Well, because I think, to me, what I think it points out is how incredibly difficult that job is.
Yeah.
To me, what it points out is a lot of the backwards thoughts that I had when I was 22 and ambitious and thought that I had it all figured out. And if you are a critic that watched Opus and you didn't like it, I have no hard feelings. Like, I've done some interviews and, it's like, fuck the critics and da-da. And I'm like, well, I don't subscribe to that.
Yeah.
If you didn't like it, I again, no hard feelings. I hope I get you on the next one. I hope you like the next one, right? But I think that the indictment is something we're all a little guilty of.
Right.
And I set out to make a film that challenged us all, and myself at the top of that list. And so I feel so deeply proud and accomplished in that challenge. And I invite you to go to a theater, have an amazing time, see John Malkovich dance and flail around, see Edeberi give a fucking incredible performance, listen to some incredible songs, do the thing that we all are listening to this pod because we love to do, which is to watch movies. And if you feel challenged in that, my hope is that it makes you ask questions. And as an artist, I don't pretend or posture to have the answers.
Yeah.
And I can't think of a more rewarding cinematic experience than going to a theater and feeling challenged. That's my favorite thing. That's what makes me want to make movies, that makes me love movies. It's not when you say the thing that I agree with. It's when I feel challenged. And I think the reason that tribalism, which has gone well past entertainment, as we all know, I feel like it has created this division to where there is no nuance and there is no conversation and there is no, it's all my guy's bigger than your guy. And if you rock with my guy, you can do no wrong. And if you don't, then it's fuck you and you can't do anything right.
Everything is sports.
Yeah. And I just don't see the world that way.
Yeah.
And so this film is there's so much honey with the medicine, but it's the most fun interrogation of that. And so I invite y'all to see that. And again, I come in peace.
I at the very beginning of this show, the pod, James Gray was on probably within the first year. We'd never met before.
Yeah.
Gotten to know him a little bit since then. He's been on the show multiple times.
I've listened to every episode of this podcast.
You told me. I know. It's
I went
like
back.
A little daunting.
No. It's
okay. You're very nice.
To the progression of like figuring the format out pre-Amanda.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, a lot has happened.
Yes.
It's gotten a lot worse, right?
It's really sick.
Yeah.
No, I mean you're just in your peak.
That's not.
This is the prime.
I'm personally not, but maybe the show is. But anyway, I bring that up because I was talking to James on the show. It was going really well. It's like he's from the same part of Queens and my family's from. Same thing as when we're talking now. I'm just like, I know this guy. You're just like, you talk to somebody, you're just like, I know this guy. I know you've had this a million times with interviewing people over the years. And I asked him near the end of the conversation, I was like, you've made a lot of great movies, but you've kind of taken some hits from critics over the years too. And you're like beloved in France, but not as much in the United States.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is that like to read someone write so specifically and so lethally
Yeah.
about something that you poured your heart into. And he was just like, it hurts so much.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people had said that to me before. And then after I asked him that question, I asked a lot of directors that. And for like years, I would ask that question.
Yeah.
Because there's like a real vulnerability to it, especially a lot of people
100%.
who write movies, you know, not if you're making like Jurassic World Rebirth, right? If you're like,
yeah,
I'm a writer director.
And I think that there is a misconception. Again, if you didn't like whatever, but there is a misconception that Opus was made. I've heard that Opus was made in a different way, like that it wasn't a first time filmmaker that gave everything that he had or she had or they had to make this thing happen. That, you know, that we didn't shoot it in 19 days. That you know, there was one report that said our budget was 4 times what the budget actually was. And I say, like, yes, any negative review, letterbox, whatever, like, it hurts. But I also feel like in my rookie season, I'm being held to a standard that I'm okay, that I'm like, don't lower it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Now,
it's a good attitude.
it's genuinely how I feel. I also think this movie absolutely slaps. And I think that when you watch this film, you will be like, wow, that was fun. And yes, John is incredible. Io is incredible. You know, whatever. I think that there's so much good and so proud of this film. So there isn't like I'm just excited that people are finally getting to see it, and I want to know what everyone thinks. I think that it's a little you know, the thing that they teach you, that people who love me have said before and during this process, is do not read the reviews. But the film, there's like an Emperor's New Clothes parable inside of Opus. And it feels somewhat hypocritical for me to section myself off and to not read reviews because some of them are mixed.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jane, like, you know, he's a great example of a director that I think takes big swings and makes interesting things. And but this is what I think we're here for. We love original films, and we love when people take swings, and, you know, when things are a little messy and challenging. And I love this film. And so I mean, like I said, I was bummed for about a week. Truly bummed. But I was like, cool, you know? And I think every director, you really make the movie for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I made this film for that kid that watched The Fifth Element. That's like, I didn't know you could put a blue alien on stage singing opera / hip hop and then have somebody pull stones out of her that saved the world. I didn't know you could do that. And to that little kid, he is having the time of his life. You know?
I always ask directors, like, what are you going to do next?
Yeah.
After their movie comes out? And there's like a lot of ways this can go.
Yeah.
And you and I have not really talked about it. We had like a 3-minute conversation about it.
Yeah.
At a birthday party. At a child's birthday party.
Yeah. Shout out to my man, Knox. Okay. He is everything good in this world. And I believe in him. He's the reason we go. We do it. Yeah, I promised myself this was like, I don't know, maybe September, October of last year. I have never, when I made my short 8 years ago, I knew that this is what I wanted to dedicate myself to. Nothing had kind of checked every box and scratched every itch for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I made this short. I went into debt making the short, and never had more fun in my life and never felt more satisfied. So I'm like, okay, cool. You found the thing. Now you got to just figure out how to do it and how to do it enough to get good at it. And then, you know, hopefully you'll be great at it one day.
Mm-hmm.
And so I promised myself that I would make something immediately after, so that I was like working during this part of the process. So I'm making this film. It's a it's about a man who's haunted by ducks, and it's a dark comedy, and I'm deeply, deeply excited and proud of it. And it's going to be really, really fun. So I've been working on that and assembling the team, and yeah, it's totally different than Opus and a very different tonally. It's just a different thing and says a different thing and a new challenge. But yeah,
Let me ask you one last question about that.
of course.
So Opus, the trajectory of that movie is like over 6 years.
Yes, 6 years.
Very long development.
Yeah.
Where it was, where it ended
Yeah.
up, all that stuff
Yeah,
takes a
yeah.
long period of time. Through some of that time, you were working at GQ. At a certain
Do
point,
most of it.
at a certain point, you stopped
Yeah.
to make the movie.
Yeah.
But now you don't have the like life raft
Yeah.
of your former career.
Yeah, I don't.
You're like in the new
Yes.
era of your
Yes.
professional life.
Yeah.
And Brady Corbet talked about this on this podcast, that like directing movies is not necessarily, if you're doing what you want to do, the most profitable enterprise. A lot of directors,
At
especially
all.
independent filmmakers, will. Sean Baker has obviously been talking about this
Yeah.
quite a bit recently. It's not easy.
Yeah.
If you're a stick to your guns kind of person with a strong vision and wanting to do things with some level of control. So, like, how do you make money? How do you pay your rent?
There's two things. One, again, this is my rookie year. So when I drive to the paint and I get fouled, I can't bitch about that.
Yeah.
When Sean Baker, who's been making interesting, wonderful, like films that really get under your skin for 20 years, he's allowed to stand on a stage and to say, I should make more money.
Mm-hmm.
And by God, Sean Baker should make more money. We should figure it out. There should be some type of governmental grant, some type of subsidy, whatever.
Nations have this.
Yes, they do. They do. Like, it sounds
literally
crazy,
do.
but
Yes.
they literally do. And you're like, you add value to the world,
Mhm.
and we are gonna have one less tank, and Sean Baker's gonna get to make 5 more movies or live in a comfortable house. Like, whatever you want to do with it. And so I don't think it's like it's just not my place to be up here and to be like, I'm complaining about how much money I'm not making or whatever.
That's not what I mean.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not trying to set you up for that.
I know how it. No. I know. Ain't nobody, brother. You would never.
I wouldn't.
So I'm saying the next thing I'm saying, I don't want it to sound like a complaint, because I genuinely do not have that. I think as a director, what did Hawthorne say? Families always rising and falling. I feel like there was a point in time, when like the American Zoetrope cats, like they weren't making money at first.
Mm-hmm.
And before that, directors really didn't make money.
Mm-hmm.
And then it went crazy. And you're getting paid, millions and millions of dollars. And the box office is a global, massive thing that we track, and now it feels like that's less of the thing. It's like if you made jazz before the boom, jazz during the boom, and then jazz after. I say this: I'm a jazz musician. I am a filmmaker. If being a filmmaker means that I will make very little money, and I'll have to, figure out how to buy the clothes I want. I've done that before.
I knew that was the first thing you were going to
see what
bring.
I'm saying? Like,
but
brother,
you know how to hustle.
I'm just saying, if I got to figure it out, if I'm on eBay to get the sweater that I want 2 years later, because that's really the sweater that I want, and I don't have that, it is not like some financial thing. Again, I think
that is the person that I knew in 2010.
That's the same.
In 2010, I was like, how is this broke kid so well dressed? This is insane to me.
You figure out your angles and you don't accept the life you don't want.
Yeah.
And all that I'm saying, it's just, this is the greatest gift that I found a thing that makes me feel this good. And so I don't know, if you're a young filmmaker, I think I'm in no position to give you advice. The thing that I will say that I would just keep in mind is every day that I went to set, every day I went to the edit, every time I got a note from the studio, every time I read a review, be it good, be it bad, be it mixed, every time I got to sit down and talk to somebody like yourself, who I genuinely respect, throughout every day of this process, there is a base level of happiness that I have because this is what the fuck I want to do. If that means that I don't make as much money as whoever who was making movies in the 90s, cool, man. You know, that's a bummer. I love money. That'd be sick. But like,
Oz Perkins said a similar thing when he was here. He was like, I do this to make some money.
Yeah, I need to. Yeah, you also don't want other people to make money on the thing and you not make money.
That's a whole other.
And that's not what I'm talking about.
That is going to happen too. Yeah. But that's a part of the game.
But I'm saying like rookie season, you know, keep in mind why you would want the money is to make you happy. And I sit here with this film out now, and I've never been happier. So, you know.
Mark Anthony Green, we end every episode of this show by asking filmmakers what's the last great thing they have seen.
Yes. I wanted to say an honest answer. I've obviously was thinking about that on the way here, and then I was like, do I say something else?
You try to flex on me with something you watched.
Not flex, but I was like, oh, because the thing isn't like out yet, but it is the answer, and it should be out soon. A very talented director, homie of mine. Her name is India Slim, and she made this short. It's a coming of age short called Crust, and the BBC produced it. And it is so deeply beautiful and moving. I don't know when it's out, but I just saw, it's the last thing that I saw, and it really, really moved me. And she's so talented. And I love short films. And have
you spoken with Amanda about that? About short films and her relationship to them?
She hates short films or something?
Yeah. She thinks they shouldn't be on the Oscars.
Well, I'll say this as Sergeant of Arms of the Dobb mob. Like, I'm not going to go against my OG. So, you know, I can't do that, especially not here, you know. But yeah, it's beautiful, Crust. And I'm excited for that to find its place in the world and for y'all to see her first kind of like narrative thing. So
thanks for being here,
man. This was such an honor to me. You know,
we did have a conversation about what this would be like 7 years ago.
Would it be weird?
No, I wasn't worried about that.
Oh,
I was just like, I can't wait to see the movie. I think I said that to you probably 10 times.
Yeah. I was,
and you held
nervous.
It for me for a long time.
I did. I needed it to be right, and to just have it done. And also, the thing that I'll say is like, there were no part of this process that wasn't like physically carrying a thing over a line.
Mm-hmm.
That was surprising to me. That it never like went into like autopilot, but that you are at every step, every filmmaker, unless you are again making like some massive thing that has hundreds of millions of dollars to throw at a problem and all the things, you were just like, cool, we have to physically carry this thing over the line. And I love that. But I couldn't have you see it until she was ready. And now all of y'all get to see it because she's ready.
I can't wait to see it again. Congratulations.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you to Mark Anthony Green. Thank you to CR and Amanda. Thanks to our producer, Bobby Wagner, for his work on this episode. Thanks to Jack Sanders for his work as well.
Thanks to Christopher Nolan.
Thanks to the Odyssey for yet another Vigilant update.
It really is funny that on IMDb, the writers are listed as Homer and Christopher Nolan. I hope those are the credits.
Yeah.
Story by Homer and.
I just hope Homer's relatives are getting residuals.
I hope there is like a guy like working in a market in Athens who's like, I'm going to go to WGA arbitration because my great grandfather wrote this.
Could be the first shot in the Oscar campaign against the Odyssey, which is no doubt coming. later this week, as I mentioned, 25 for 25 begins.
I wish you guys the best on this project. I can't wait to listen.
Thanks so much, Chris. We'll see you then.